Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Cinematic Realms. I'd say another, but we've been off for a couple weeks again. I'm your host, Gwen. With me, as always, is Jared. How you doing, Jared? Did you have a nice vacation?
I, I but looking forward to not only getting to catch up with a number of movies and shows and things that I had been, trying to get up on, but all the more so looking forward to today, to this discussion, because this is when we set out to announce that 2025 was kind of a big anniversary year for us in terms of a lot of films that we love having their 10th anniversaries, 20th anniversaries, 25th anniversaries. Really, the headliner was that it was all leading up to this, and we had our discussion of the 20th anniversary of Pride and Prejudice, and we had plans to make it a bigger event. We'll get into some of those plans a little, but you know what? We're just two dudes who love Pride and Prejudice, and that's how we started this channel, and now we've come full circle.
Yeah. Life got in the way of, of bigger plans. We had a whole idea that we were going to cover the 95 miniseries leading up to this, and it's and not to mention a bunch of other streams that I had hoped to do, like more anniversary streams for other films, and then I got sick, which I'm still not 100% bounced back from, and then and then scheduling was another thing, and it's just you make the best of, like, you have all the best intentions in the world, and then and things happen, but like we don't need an excuse to, like, we don't need to do anything special to discuss this film, other than wanting to discuss it, and the fact that it is the 20th anniversary, just it makes it all the more special. And it's we are actually a week behind on the 20th anniversary, but I'm actually happy that we planned on doing it this week, because last week you weren't able to make the discussion that we had planned to do, just because you were getting back from your vacation and it was going to be a whole mess. So I don't think we would have been able to like, even if you had tried to like push it, or like, if it just wouldn't have worked. So I'm more than happy that we're discussing it this week. And it's hard to believe that it's been so long, and our discussion of this movie, our initial discussion, goes all the way back to our not only to our first stream together, but really back to the very beginning of the channel. It wasn't the very first thing I discussed. I think I had like a Tolkien Day stream that I did with Stev and with my good friend Helen, and then I think I might have done Rome season 1 with Nessie, and then we did. I had you on for Pride and Prejudice, and it really, like, we can't like say that it was what sort of really brought us together initially, because that was the whole Game of Thrones kerfuffle, and and the fact that we were kindred spirits who both enjoyed season 8, and that was the initial thing that got us together. But I feel what solidified it was when we realized that we were both A, huge Keira Knightley fans, and B, that we both loved this movie unconditionally. And then it was pretty much like, okay, I've met a friend for life. And so, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't quite the Step Brothers meme, but it was a similar vibe.
Yeah.
In terms of just the fact that having a lot of shared interests in terms of movies, and also not just that, but in terms of how we see movies in general and how we approach, engaging with movies and TV, in terms of, really wanting to celebrate the craft and the story and, look at what we love rather than try to, tear down things that we don't. And this is kind of something, one of the reasons it's so special is because it evolved so organically. Our love for this movie in particular, we both came to it in kind of differing, unexpected ways that we, recounted on our initial stream, which I actually went back and watched. And, it's pretty much the same, vibe. Because it was early days in the channel, for instance, there was no countdown, where there were no pictures. But other than that, I had more hair. But other than that, it was more the same vibe. But the sincerity of it, there's a reason why that's still one of my favorite discussions we've ever done, because just the other like adoration and admiration that we both have for this movie, comes through in every minute that we're discussing. That stream was under 3 hours, which, became less of a staple for us. And we went through the entire movie.
Like, how on earth did we even do that? Like, it's the idea of going beat by beat through a movie and it taking us only 3 hours is like
2 hours and 40 minutes, and the movie itself is only a little bit over 2 hours, so we did go long. But I watched it. We went through the entire movie, and it wasn't just a plot recap. We talked about the themes and the characters and the cinematic craft and the moments. That's why I think it was such a great discussion. But yeah, it really was much more of we couldn't help ourselves. We couldn't limit ourselves to just talking about certain aspects of the movie. We had to talk about all of it because we love all of it.
Which I'm really happy that we had a chance to do it and that it was done in such a relatively concise way. Because I feel like, I'm just going to be honest, I don't think we're capable of that anymore. And so the fact that we don't have to attempt to do that, we pretty much did the beat by beat discussion of Pride and Prejudice perfectly in that first stream. The only thing I would add to it, honestly, are pictures. Like that's the only thing I feel is missing from that stream in terms of like a discussion of like the full film. And so, which is why today is not even going to attempt to do that. We are literally just sitting here celebrating our love of this movie 20 years on. And so it's going to be a completely different kind of stream. If anybody is watching this and they want our beat by beat discussion of the movie, go back. It's one of the very first streams on the channel, and it's wonderful. Like I haven't watched it recently, but I just remember like how great it was, and I've looked at bits of it over the years. But maybe I should watch it again and take lessons from myself on how to streamline a discussion. Because the fact that we went through every beat of that movie and gushed about it and talked about themes and performances and craft and all that stuff, and it only took us like a bit under 3 hours, like I'm in awe of that. And
as someone who went back and watched, I've watched it recently. One of the ways we did that was we really didn't have any tangents because we were both just so locked in on the movie that like that was really all we wanted to talk about, other than like very small detours to acknowledge like how like other performances by actors in other movies that we love and things like that. But yeah, it's it is still a discussion that I think holds up very well. And also one of the other things that I kind of sprang to my mind as I watched it was I looked at the date of the stream, and it was April 16th, 2020, which was basically a month after the world shut down for the COVID pandemic. And there's, but you can't really tell that from our discussion. I remember it because, I was in medical school at the time, and they basically like sent us all home from our rotations because at the time we were considered non-essential personnel. And so I was just kind of, sitting at home, and that's when you came to me with the idea to do the stream. And it was one of the first things that in that particularly dark time that I remember really just feeling like utter joy getting to do that. So I again can't thank you enough for that, and for the, your subsequent offer to become your co-host.
Yeah. Yeah, God, what a different time that was. Like, just I just want to interrupt sort of our discussion to say that Pat, I'm not going to dignify that by putting that up on the screen.
Yeah, not today. And I will just acknowledge that I would still be very happy at a later date to talk about the 1995 BBC version, because I do love it. Separate from this anniversary discussion, but as we said in our initial discussion, the reason that the two of us love Pride and Prejudice as a story and watched the 95 miniseries and read the book and are so passionate about this, story in general, is because of this movie. So that is why it is our favorite, and we think it is the best version of the story.
Yeah. And like, as we said in the opening minutes, it actually, like, obviously Patter's trolling us as he does, and we love it. But we actually had every intention of covering the 95 version as a lead up to this. And again, unfortunately, life got in the way, but so we'll be putting that off till a later date. I'm sure we'll get to it at some point, but yeah, it's yeah. So where to even really begin? Like, I'm just gonna start off talking about sort of my experience of sort of coming to this movie, which I'm sure I've talked about various times on the channel between that earlier stream about the movie to our various Keira Knightley streams and what have you. I love how I just, if you look back, like in those earlier years, I just came up with like random reasons to just do a Keira Knightley stream and just gush. But no, it's, obviously I had seen her in the Pride, not this is Pride and Prejudice, but in Pirates of the Caribbean. It's, also got my shirt. Sorry, everybody. I didn't have time to mute. Sorry. In addition to everything else I've been feeling, my allergies have been acting up to seasonal allergies. So yeah. But so I already had like a little bit of a crush on her from watching Pirates of the Caribbean. And by little bit, I mean I was paying attention like every single time she was on screen. We've already talked we've done multiple Pirates discussions where I talked about that first time she opens her eyes in that movie, and immediately being like, oh my God, who is that? And but getting back over to this, it just so happened that my my mom's birthday had come along, and I had not done a great job that year as son, and yeah, I'm just gonna say it. I forgot to get her a card for her birthday. As a terrible son, so I was like, well, how about I take you out to the movies? And I was looking for an excuse to go see Pride and Prejudice, not because I knew myself as a real buff for movie buff for like Jane Austen flicks, but but because I wanted to see Keira Knightley in it, regardless of what the movie was. So that was totally like, it was very self-serving, and so I took her to the movie, um, and I just remember like being about halfway through the movie and just sitting in my seat, and it was such a big transformative moment for me of like sort of realizing a lot about myself, because I was sitting there and I remember feeling and saying to myself, oh my God, I really hope Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy get together. I hope it's a happy ending. And it's just completely like obliterated any sort of like pretense at a disdain for like romantic dramas or anything like that. It pretty much opened the floodgates for me, and I've never been the same since. And really, what I've now come to realize that it was sort of opening the floodgates for the part of myself that, not that this has to be the case for everybody who enjoys this movie or other movies like it, but I do feel like it sort of opened up the feminine side of me, and even though I didn't know it at the time, like really started making me sort of be like, I don't have to adhere to these sort of gender norms that like, oh, I'm a guy and I'm not supposed to watch or gasp love movies like this. And so it was just a really transformative moment for me, and it's always been the case that ever since then, like my emotions are just completely laid bare when I watch this movie, and it's just so beautiful. And then of course the fact that I went from having a crush on Keira Knightley to honestly just falling head over heels in love with her. And I think it's important to note not only like her as an actress, but Elizabeth Bennet as a character. Like it's the thing that I sort of notice, like every time I go back to watch this movie, I'm specifically like smitten with Elizabeth when I watch this movie, and like her performance is, I've always called her performance just radiant in this movie, because I think it's just a perfect descriptor. And like when you have Darcy first notice her at Meriton, and just glancing over in her direction, you can see that he immediately like falls in love with her at first sight. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, I feel you, dude. I'm right there with you. So yeah, it's just like this movie was just so impactful on a number of levels, and like it's ended up just shaping me as a lover of cinema in a lot of ways, in not too dissimilar way to, I always sort of credit Lord of the Rings as being like a big sort of, what's the word I'm looking for, like really determining so much about what kind of film fan I am. And then in a similar way, I feel like this movie determined sort of emotionally what kind of movies that I respond to. And yeah, I hold it up as one of my absolute favorite films of all time. As a matter of fact, it's probably my second favorite film after Pride and Prejudice, after Lord of the Rings. Sorry. And yeah, that's been the case for 20 years now. And so and the fact that I got to experience that with my mom, even though it was under like false pretenses. But we continued to watch it together, for years afterwards. So like, and even now that she's gone, like it's sort of not possible to watch this without like thinking about her and feeling like she still watches it with me, and so, and I've actually sort of carried on the tradition of watching it now. I watch it with my godmother, and she loves the movie too. So yeah, it's if anybody doesn't know by this point, it's an extraordinarily important film for me, and yeah, and I don't know. That's what I have to say at the moment. I'll pass the baton over to you.
No. I mean, it's very appropriate that that's what your focus is on right now, because again, we talked about this movie extensively already, and it's the movie itself hasn't changed, although it now has gotten an upgrade in the form of the 4K anniversary release that we were begging for months, and it didn't seem like we were going to get it,
Right
and
here.
then we finally did, and it looks great. But the thing about the movie and why it is, I think, a staple for both of us, and why it's one of my favorite movies of all time, is because even though the story itself is timeless and the story itself hasn't changed, we've changed, and that was true even in the immediate aftermath of having seen the movie, because I will acknowledge that while I loved this movie from the first time I saw it, like, that love has only grown stronger. Like, back in 2005, like, even though Pride and Prejudice would have ranked very highly on my list of favorite movies of that year, it probably was not number one at the time. Like, I also loved Batman Begins. I also loved Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. I also loved Kingdom of Heaven, and I still love all those movies. But the thing about Pride and Prejudice is that every time I've gone back to see it since, I just have that feeling, that special feeling that I can literally just feel my heart swelling with
Yeah.
love and appreciation for this movie. And I can just find myself sometimes, as I was watching it last night, like, my face just randomly breaks into a smile for no reason, even if it's not like a major scene of any kind, but just because I'm like, oh, I remember that little beat. I remember that character interaction. I remember the first time I noticed that particular detail. And that's the kind of thing that you get when you allow yourself to, not just, fall in love with a movie, but fall in love with a movie over time, And this is one of those movies that, like, has absolutely not only held up for me, but I've discovered new layers in it, and new appreciation for instance, performances that I, perhaps wasn't as fixated on the first time I watched the movie. And all of that, is one of the reasons why I think that it has endured the test of time. It was, we talk about the fact that it's the 20th anniversary, and we, as, people who have loved this story, would have celebrated that regardless. But it is notable that this movie has become widely beloved enough that not only did it get a 20th anniversary special box set, it got a 20th anniversary theatrical re-release, even though that release was in April for reasons that remain inexplicable to me. And I will just note that I have seen a ton of love for this version of the movie on, social media and the internet in general. Like, that is a special and rare thing. The fact that, because I think back to, when I was going back through movies, that were released around this time, there were a lot of movies that I watched and I was like, that was good. Never thought about it again, really. But I think the culture does that a lot for movies. Like, even if there are diehard fans of pretty much everything that you can find out there, it is a special thing when, we as a culture kind of generally say, that was actually special. That is something that is worthy of commemorating on, like, every year, as every year passes, that movie still matters. And that's obviously the case with something that we love, like Lord of the Rings. But this movie has reached that status. 20 years is kind of, it can be arbitrary in certain sense, but 20 years is basically, it's a generation. That's kind of what it is. So, somebody who is is born, and then once they reach, 20, they're an adult, they've grown up. Or if they were 20 and then they're 40, they've probably had multiple events in their life. They may have gotten married, they may have had kids. But so it really kind of serves as a demarcator that, you've lived a life in that time. Like we've lived a life in that time. I was in high school when this movie came out. Now I'm, working as a doctor on the other side of the country. But this movie is still a constant. My feelings for this movie are still, intense and, passionate, and just overall something that I continue to treasure, every aspect of it. And not just the movie itself, but the kind of the halo that extends around it, that includes other people who love it, and that includes you, Gwen.
Yeah. God, yeah. It's although I don't like being reminded that a generation has passed since it came out. Yeah, the 20-year mark is a kind of I always say I always find that to be the freaky one, because I associate 20th anniversaries with the Star Wars Special Edition. Just because that was like the big thing growing up that I was aware of, that the movies came back out with all these new things, and it was the 20th anniversary of the original Star Wars, and to kid me, that was like that movie was old, and it's like, and now it passes by in the blink of an eye, and I'm like, oh God, really? Pride and Prejudice is now as old as Star Wars was when the special edition came out. But at the same time, like I'm overjoyed to have been able to live with this film for that long, and to have it like be part of my soul, and to have seeped into my bones in a way. And I said the same thing with like Lord of the Rings, and and other films that we've talked about. There's just something extremely in a world, like, because in our lives so much can change and so much can happen. Just look, you talked about the last discussion was at the, our last discussion was at the very start of COVID. And like, that's the perfect example of how, things can change. And, think about, and then unfortunately some things come back around and stay the same. But in terms of like, it's just wild to think of that. And I know where I was going with that, because so much can change, and the world is so uncertain, and there's ups and downs and all this crazy stuff. But for 20 years we've had this beautiful piece of art that enriches our souls, and we can sit down and we can feel the sort of the power of it, and the heart of it, and like, it never has to go away. That never has to change. It can change in ways, because we change with the things that we watch, but Pride and Prejudice is one of those, very much, again, drawing the personal comparison for me to Lord of the Rings again. It's like, it's one of those movies that it starts and you just kind of exhale and let it take over you, and it's like, I'm back where in this place where my heart is swelling. With Fellowship of the Ring, I always say it's that moment when when Frodo says to Gandalf, I'm glad you're back, and Ian McKellen just does this wonderful thing where he says, so am I, my dear boy, and he goes, so am I. And I always feel like he's speaking for me, in that moment, or the larger audience. And it's the same thing with this movie, where it's just like, I think it happens instantaneously, where you've got that opening credits with the sunrise, and then it just cuts to Elizabeth reading, her book, and then you got Dario Marianelli's score, and in the background, just that gentle piano, and it just feels like I'm back enjoying the story that I love again, and it's really special when that can happen, and I'm glad that I've gotten to do that with this film for 20 years. It's beautiful.
And it's the story itself, there is a reason that it has endured. We're fixated on this version of the movie because it was in our introduction to this story, but the original novel, Jane Austen's novel that obviously that this is based on, was published in 1813. That was over 200 years ago.
Yeah.
And over 200 years later, that story still has power. And it is fitting that as new people encounter it, they would want to help, adapt it and modernize it and bring it forward to people, so that new generations can experience it, And obviously Pride and Prejudice, in addition to having several direct adaptations, has also been, basically lightly, ripped off, to use the, just a general term for like a lot of romances that you see in terms of like rom-coms and the like, you look at them and you're like, that's Pride and Prejudice. They're calling it something else. It's set somewhere else. It's different characters, but it's Pride and Prejudice. And it's because the narrative, spine of what brings these two people together initially in, kind of mutual like distrust and detestation, and eventually works its way, into, true and sincere love. Like, it's one of the most powerful, staples in all of storytelling. I always think back to, before the movie was coming out, and then I saw like the posters and the trailers, and one of the taglines that was featured in the marketing was, it said, "This holiday season, experience the greatest love story of all time." And to be honest, movie marketing will do a lot of that stuff, where they will say that something is, the greatest ever. And it's like, it is what it is. You got to sell it. But in this case, I actually think it's true. I actually think Pride and Prejudice is the single greatest love story ever told.
I love when, because a lot of times marketing can be like overblown, and taglines can sort of, make you roll your eyes. And if you're not someone who's into romantic period pieces, the taglines for this movie probably made you roll your eyes. But I think it's like perfectly warranted when it's a story that has stood the test of time and has proved itself. And like, I'm it's funny. I'm actually recalling, I'm drawing so many more comparisons to Lord of the Rings this stream than I thought I was going to, because on the surface they're not related. But we're talking about marketing, and the first theatrical teaser for the Lord of the Rings trilogy, I forget the exact wording of it, but it basically says, this Christmas, it's, the greatest story ever told comes to life. And I'm like, yeah, no argument. I'm like, when you can actually flex that, it's like, you've got something good on your hands. And so I don't really blame marketing departments when they've got something like Pride and Prejudice, and they're just going to, let the promotion, let the taglines off the hook a bit, and be like, yeah, this is a big one. So yeah, it's God, I love this movie so much.
Yeah, our friend Potter was continuing to kind of gently troll us in the trap, and I was trying to give a little bit of, because we enjoy when Potter kind of will prod us a bit, but we stand firm. We stand firm on
Yeah,
our
I'm still not putting it up, Pattern. Needless to say, he is trolling us about everything from the from the '95 Pride and Prejudice to the fact that Keira Knightley and Natalie Portman to many are interchangeable. Yeah, but we love you, Patter, and we thank you for stopping in tonight. Yeah. So, yeah, I just this is the one thing about like and not going through and talking about this story beat by beat is I will have a couple moments tonight where I'm like, okay, where do we go from here? Um, but I'm just gonna say that again, like I want to give some love to some other people in the film because we'll just be heaping praise upon Keira throughout the entire stream. That's what we do. But like I just don't like uh yeah, I just have to say, like, what a monumental performance this is from her in this film. This was her first Academy Award nomination, and in my opinion, she should have won. Shocker there. But I think it's still her, like, it's probably still her greatest performance. Just because she knew this part inside and out, and so just there is this feeling that she had been sort of building up to this throughout her youth, and so I think that's reflected in it. Although I will say that we've talked about this in other discussions. I think that the one where I think, ironically, she was not doing so well during the production, but I always go to her performance in The Duchess, which I also think is one of her finest performances. But that might have been a case of real life stresses bleeding through into the performance, and we don't want that. But I think it's not a stretch to say this is still probably her most beloved performance by fans, even though I think that she's like, I also, I mean, obviously I love her work and everything, but, then her performances and things like, Colette especially come to mind, which I love her in. But there is something about this performance where again I used the word radiant before, and I think that is the case here. It's just this sort of infectious joy, watching her performance in this movie, and yeah, I just think it's one of there's no way for anything I say not to sound like hyperbole just because everybody knows how much I adore her. But I do think it's one of the greatest screen performances, ever. So yeah, I don't have, there's no way for me to be objective about these things. But yeah, her performance is a big part of why I fell in love with this movie as much as I did. And, especially, I got to the end of watching it today, and like, I will never, ever keep it together when she has that scene with Donald Sutherland at the end of the movie, as she's describing, how she feels about Darcy, and that shared giggle that she has with her father, where they both cover their mouth, and it's just yeah, her work in this is just absolutely spellbinding, and yeah, that's as I say, it's like I'm never going to be objective about it, but I just I'm in love with her performance, like, and as hard as it is to believe, like more and more every time I watch this film, like I find more to just um to sort of be blown away by in her portrayal as Elizabeth Bennet, and yeah.
No, I mean, I think that for me, it still stands unquestionably as my favorite performance that she has given in her entire storied career. And I have loved many of her other performances. You mentioned, Paulette, Pirates of the Caribbean, which watching Kira's reaction to her performance in Pirates, she's like, after those movies, everyone thought I was a terrible actress. And I'm like, no, we did not. I understand why she may have, felt that at the time because of the, some of the critics were probably, over the pirate franchise even at that point. But, there was that conversation that, for instance, she had with Rosamund Pike reflecting on the 20th anniversary of Pride Prejudice. And it's very gratifying to see that she still recognizes what it was that this movie did for her in her career,
Yeah.
really kind of helping to catapult her, into not only her first Academy Award nomination, which I agree she should have won. This is one of my all-time favorite Academy Award nominations in any category. Really, the only one I would even put in comparison with it is, other than the Lord of the Rings, like victories for the films, would be like Sigourney Weaver being nominated for Aliens and things like that.
Yeah.
But she recognized that like this movie essentially allowed her to write her ticket in Hollywood because it is her movie. She is the star, and she was only like what like 20 when she made this. It's such an incredibly rich and nuanced performance, and it has all of the hallmarks of a character, a modern day heroine that we are inclined to love. She gets to be incredibly fiercely intelligent and and also like incredibly witty and strong-willed, but she also gets to be deeply compassionate and loving with her siblings, and she gets to display like real fire when when she perceives that they are under threat. But then she also gets to acknowledge the title themes of the movie when her worldview is challenged and she kind of gets broken a little bit, and then she has to evolve and soften and yes, fall in love with this man, Mr. Darcy, who she originally like had a very different opinion of. And by the end, she has not sacrificed anything about her character. She is still the same, intelligent, strong-willed, passionate woman that she was at the beginning, but she is changed. And she has, found something in life that she thought maybe wasn't going to be for her. That moment where in the beginning of the scene of the movie where she is kind of joking with Jane that like only the deepest love will persuade me into matrimony, which is why I will end up an old maid. And by the end, she has, found love with this man, Mr. Darcy, who is in every respect worthy of her love. He has proven that, and she has also proven that she is worthy of his love, and that they are in fact exceedingly well matched. And Keira gets to play all of that. Like there, you would mention that like it's hard for you to be objective about this movie, and I would agree because art is inherently subjective. But
Yeah.
when we try as much as we can to say that like these are the elements that make for a great screen performance and a great cinematic character, Keira Knightley's performance as Elizabeth Bennet has all of them. And like for her to accomplish that at such a young age, in such a mature and lasting way, there is a reason that she became so successful because she had those instincts, and this movie, under Joe Wright's direction, brought them out of her. And as I said, I'm still discovering nuances in her performance 20 years later that like little facial expressions, things that she's doing, like with her, with her facial expressions and her gestures, even when she might not be the central focus of the scene, And it's because she's committed to this character. She is living this character. She is bringing this iconic heroine, Elizabeth Bennet, again, a character who has endured for 200 years in our popular culture, to life. And it's one of the reasons that I think that, yes, this is my favorite version, not only my favorite Keira Knightley performance, but this is my favorite rendition of Elizabeth Bennet as a character. Because I just, the heart that Keira brings to it, makes it so for me.
Yeah. And and you and I have talked about this, but like, just talking about, versions of the character. And you mentioned earlier about how this is a story that keeps, even outside of the influence it has on, other love stories, but the story also keeps getting retold, in terms of the Pride and Prejudice story. And we're going to be getting another one. And now I'm in the position of being like the 95 miniseries purist, where I'm like, nope, this is my version of Pride and Prejudice, and I have no interest in any new version. And even as I was watching it today, I'm like, yeah, and watching scenes that were just making my heart flutter, I'm like, no, there is no way any new version is ever going to come close to to this. And so yeah, now the shoe's on the other foot, but but that doesn't mean I'm gonna learn from that. I'm still gonna choose to be stubborn and be like, this is my version. Any new versions, you suck.
Poor Emma Corrin, who we have loved in many other.
And I love Emma Corrin, but yeah, how dare you? Like, you want to step into Keira Knightley's shoes? How dare you?
Yeah, we've joked about this. I remain more open-minded to the new version of Pride and Prejudice that we're going to be getting on Netflix, both because I accept the idea that it's not a remake of the movie; it's a new adaptation of the novel that has been adapted many times before. So it can exist without compromising anything that I love about this movie. But I will also acknowledge that, like, yeah, guys, the bar's up here. And if you don't clear it, then I'm gonna give you a golf clap and say admirable effort, but I'm gonna go back and watch my version of Pride and Prejudice now.
See, no, I'm like, even if they met the bar, I would just raise the bar higher up. So yeah, no. I'm much more eager for the new Sense and Sensibility, because I don't like, as much as I adore Ang Lee's film, and it will probably remain like my favorite version of that story. I'm also not as territorial about it, because it doesn't have the meaning, that the personal meaning that this film has for me. So, so like, I'm fine with being completely unreasonable. It's just, I've had to put up with that from all the 95 fans. And so, like, now it's my time to be petty.
Yeah, which is fair. Although, again, we see this pattern in a lot of other.
But I'm saying it all tongue in cheek. I'm not being mean spirited about it. Like,
yeah. we've joked about we are as big Star Wars fans, we are veterans of the prequel wars, so we
Yeah.
like it is a similar dynamic where like we loved this thing for 20 years and had to endure like some people be continuing to crap on it. But then as time passed and more people came around to the idea that no, though those movies are actually pretty great, as this one is, now we're like, we feel like we were here first. we
Yeah.
we are we have loved this movie forever, and so we are going to naturally feel protective of it, and it'll just I want to keep my heart open to the possibility that someone who perhaps has never seen this movie will watch the new Netflix version of Pride and Prejudice and fall in love with the story that way, and that can be their introduction into the world. But for me, in my subjective experience, it was always this movie, and it will always be this movie. So I just, I'm planting my flag, but I'm also like, there's room for everyone on the We Love Pride and Prejudice island. So however you get here, just behave yourselves.
And acknowledge that Keira Knightley is the greatest Elizabeth Bennet. That's all I ask. I don't think I'm being unreasonable. Okay. So, so yeah, I feel like we've done our due diligence there, and we'll continue talking about how great Keira is throughout the rest of the stream. But let's give some love to some of the other people in this movie. It's just one of those things again where we have to talk about the actor's perception of how they did in something. Matthew Macfadyen, you are more than dishy enough to be Mr. Darcy. I mean, look at this. He doesn't think he. I've never actually heard that. I think this was the first time I ever heard that phrase. Also, a dishy.
It's a British phrase. They have their own slang for it. It means sexy, basically. But which I mean, look at this guy. Like him striding across. There's a reason that him striding across the moors towards Elizabeth Bennet at dawn with that music playing became not to draw direct comment, because obviously it's a sensitive topic for many, but like this is basically his version of Colin Firth's wet shirt moment from the 95 miniseries that basically caused an entire generation to fall in love with that version of Mr. Darcy.
And I feel like this is a major part of the reason why he's sort of down on himself a little bit in terms of being like a good Mr. Darcy, because because of the shadow of Colin Firth. And Matthew is my preferred Darcy. It's a package deal. Like it's him and Keira, and I love both of them. I love their chemistry. I love Matthew's performance as Darcy. There's a vulnerability there that, not saying it's not there for Colin Firth's portrayal, but it's just different. And like you can see, like from the moment he first spots Elizabeth, in this film, and the way he sort of, when she's not looking at him and when he's looking at her, he's like a lovesick puppy. He really is. And that's sort of what I love about his version of Darcy. And so, with all due respect, Mr. Macfadyen, you're wrong. You are more than dishy enough, and you give an absolutely astonishing performance. And everybody else has gone on to know him from things like Succession, but he's always going to be Mr. Darcy to me.
Yeah, no, I mean that it is we have talked about the concept of director bullshit. I think that this is a little bit of like, I won't say actor bullshit, but actors, understandably, like, sometimes feeling a little bit insecure about their work and perhaps how it stands up to some of the greats. So, he might be being a little bit self-deprecating, but no, I mean, he's a phenomenal Mr. Darcy, and this is also an element that has all those great performance elements that I mentioned with Keira there, and like the evolution his character goes under. I think it's, I think you kind of touched on a key bit there, which is one of the ways his Mr. Darcy is different from Colin Firth's Mr. Darcy is that Colin Firth's Mr. Darcy plays a little bit more like, stiff upper lip, like repressed by like the social mores and manners of the time. Whereas this Mr. Darcy has some of that, but he's also just a little bit more socially awkward. On a personal level, and that makes him a little bit more relatable again to modern audiences, because a lot of those social mores that used to exist at the time of Regency era England, which this movie takes place a little bit before, like those have melted away from our culture. But the idea of being tongue-tied when you lock eyes with a pretty girl, a woman with a pair of fine eyes, as they would say in the novel, and getting the butterflies and not really knowing how to react, like that hasn't changed in 200 years, guys. We're still everyone still can understand what that feels like, no matter your gender or who you're attracted to. And so that's one of the reasons that the story has endured. And Mr. Darcy plays that, those initial moments, wonderfully. And then he plays the evolution where we get to see the good man who is almost like being hidden by that awkwardness. And as he emerges, and that's how, Elizabeth ultimately starts to fall in love with him. I will just note as a side note that one place where I get grumpy, as you also alluded to, is the fact that when new generations discover an actor later, like I've listened to a few podcasts, for instance, when somebody's like, "Oh, Matthew McFadden, he's Tom from Succession, and he's so great. Where was he before that show?" And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Go watch Pride and Prejudice 2005. We've been new
and we were just talking about this with Sean Astin, and being known, like if he's not known from Stranger Things, people know him from 50 First Dates, and I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Yeah, we have failed as a culture. If this is, like I will accept if you know Sean Astin from Rudy or something along those lines, but
like I can sort of also understand, like if I say, I don't know, because Lord of the Rings was such a big cultural phenomenon. Like I not that like Stranger Things is a cultural phenomenon, but not in the way that Lord of the Rings was.
Yes.
But like I could get on board with somebody being testy with me for referring to Sean Astin and Samwise Gamgee, and they're like, he's Rudy. Like I get, but also like Lord of the Rings was so monumentally huge that I feel like I should get a pass. We should all get a pass on that one. It's knowing him for smaller things that he did later, where it's like, that feels insulting. So yeah, I get really annoyed about stuff like that. And it's like, it's like if, I mean, I was going to make this comparison, but actually I don't know that I'd be that upset about it just because he was so freaking good. But it would be like somebody, saying, I'm going to take this back. I'm going to say it, but then I'm going to take it back because I feel wrong about it. But it's somewhat similar to if somebody only knows Mark Hamill from voicing the Joker. And it's like, which I don't know. Again, I'm going to take that back a little bit because it's such a monumental like vocal performance and it's obviously so iconic. But at the same time, like if you don't know that Mark Hamill is fucking Luke Skywalker, I do not want to talk to you. Yeah, so it's a similar thing. It's like, yeah. uh,
You know, it would be like if Mark, you knew Mark Hamill from like the Fall of the House of Usher on Netflix or Brigsby Bear, and
yes,
you didn't and
there
you
you go.
didn't
That's
acknowledge
better.
and you
That's
didn't acknowledge and you didn't acknowledge Luke Skywalker or the Joker.
Yeah,
But
that
again,
works better.
but again, like I think that Tom, his performance as Tom on Succession is obviously iconic. He won Emmys for it,
Yeah.
so it's fine if that's where you're in. But it's like, but recognize that like the man's been doing excellent work for over 20 years, and the proof of it is in this movie because he was freaking Mr. Darcy and he crushed it.
And also, I do want to say, like, it's obviously it's a smaller sort of, it registers as smaller on his filmography, but if anybody hasn't seen the British film Death at a Funeral, he's in that, and he's hilarious, but also you have so much sympathy for him. It's like, oh, the poor guy, what he has to put up with. But he's good in that too. So yeah, he's had a wonderful career that predates Succession. So please just don't call him Tom from Succession. Um, I did want to say, like, sort of piggybacking on what I was talking about earlier with him portraying Darcy Darnaz, a lovesick puppy who just does not know how to communicate. And when he does, he's putting his foot in his mouth. But like, there's this moment in the opening, in the his first sequence in the dance hall, where after he's said the whole, where he's like, do you dance, Mr. Darcy? Not if I can help it. And you know and then, like, as she goes back to dancing, you know which, she's just absolutely looking phenomenally gorgeous as she's on the dance floor. And then it has that shot of him just walking slowly towards her, as if like the dance ends, but you can tell he's walking slowly up to her, trying to, work up the courage to actually ask her to dance. But it's just the way he's looking at her with this soft expression on his face as he's moving through the crowd. And then Joe Wright just does something so brilliant, which is then he switches to Elizabeth dancing, and she's got this just beautiful smile on her face as she's dancing. She's having so much fun. And you feel like you are seeing her as Darcy sees her, and the man is hopelessly in love with her already. Like, it's been 2 seconds. And he's just he's done for. Unfortunately, he's just said some things that he's that he's going to regret. And yeah. So I just, and by the way, it's someone we haven't really, we've only mentioned like once or twice so far. This is a Joe Wright film, by the way. And like, his first feature film. And
Wild.
and it's just such a beautifully, impeccably directed film. And moments like this are what get me, where you're sort of navigating the chaos of this big dance hall with so much going on, and we're not even at the tracking shot that he does later. But it's just the way he puts you in the heads of like these characters as they're observing each other. And yeah, it's just that is one of my favorite moments, just because, and I don't know, maybe it's partly because I was falling in love with Kira too watching this, but to me it very much felt like, communicating to the audience just how head over heels he is already.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, he just doesn't know how to express that. And and he says some stuff when he thinks she's not listening that he really should not have said.
Yeah.
Um,
One wonders, like, if that moment, like, in terms of like moments that would have, made everything so much easier, but also would have deprived us of the story. If he just hadn't said that, then he would have probably asked her to dance later in the movie. She would have said yes, and then they probably would have, But who knows if they would have actually fallen in love as deeply? Maybe they needed to go through all of this, but also
yeah,
like they like, because it's not just him having falling in love with her immediately. Like right before that, there's that wonderful moment where Lizzie is kind of laughing off the whole concept of, dancing and socializing. And Jane says to her in a very wise older sister way, one of these days, Lizzie, someone's going to catch your eye and then you're going to have to watch your tongue. And then immediately Darcy walks in and Lizzie he catches her eye. Hey,
I
Danny.
get it.
Um,
Um, yeah, and there are moments like where and there's actually a shot in the trailer where which is not in the film, which is after they lock eyes. She has kind of a sort of flirty look at him. And
yeah.
I understand why that was like taken out of the movie, because maybe it was just going a little too far for sort of what would have been sort of the social norm in that situation. But I always love that shot of her in the trailer. And but even without that, she talks that he looked at her and then looked away real quick, and she giggles to herself,
Mm-hmm.
And then there's later when she's talking with Charlotte,
Sure. Yeah.
and Charlotte's like, count your blessings, Lissy. If he liked you, you'd have to talk to him. And she's, like, precisely as it is, I would not dance with him for all of Derbyshire, not even the miserable half. And she laughs it off. But then it stays on her long enough to see like her sort of like, lamenting, what, like, she does initially like him, and so the spark is there on both sides. It's just unfortunate that he acts like an ass.
Yeah. Yeah, and the thing about it is, to bring it back to the title of the movie, like the Pride and Prejudice, like in the beginning, it is more the fact that like she likes him, she asks him to dance, he has an awkward, turning her down, and then he says something he very much should not say, and it is more that he wounds her pride. It's very much the like, oh, you don't like me, well then, I screw you. And we get a wonderful, like I've talked about the moment that I truly fell in love with Elizabeth as the character is the moment when, again, he's trying to feel out how to approach her with the poetry angle. And then she rebuffs that. And he's like, so what do you recommend to encourage affection? And she just kind of smirks at him and says, dancing, even if one's partner is barely tolerable. And it is the quintessential mic drop, but it is a moment that is born of, hurt, genuine hurt.
Yeah.
And obviously, like what becomes her pride, deepens into prejudice later when he actually, crosses what the line with what he does to separate Jane and Mr. Bingley. And that is obviously a much greater affront. But like it is notable that before that happens, even though he has wounded her pride and she seems to enjoy now like needling him back, their dynamic remains quite almost flirtatious at times, like the wonderful scene in the parlor after she comes to the to see her sister Jane, and she is kind of teasing him about like do you consider pride a fault or a virtue, because we're trying our best to find a fault in you, and when he kind of has a very serious response of perhaps it is hard that I find it hard to forgive others follies or vices against me, my good opinion is once lost is lost forever, and she just kind of smiles and says, oh dear, I cannot tease you about that. What a shame, for I dearly love to laugh. And he almost seems disarmed by that. And then of course there's the hand touch, the famous hand touch scene as he's lifting her into the carriage. where they clearly both feel that spark of electricity. So, the attraction is obvious and manifest, but it is obviously complicated, and that's what makes it so much fun to watch, because we, as you said, we are kind of in the moment with these characters. And one of the things that this version of Pride and Prejudice does so well, I feel like, is it really makes the story feel alive, with the character. The moment I almost immediately lock into the movie, as mentioned, that we have that wonderful little prologue with Lizzie walking across the field, and then the news arriving about Mr. Bingley and Neverfield. But as soon as we get to the ball and it's just this rousing music and everyone is dancing and like smiling, and I'm just like, here it is. This is what this version of Pride and Prejudice does so well, because it is a bit more loose and informal. They set it at an earlier time than the novel so that the characters can be a little bit less, stiff upper lip, and a little bit more free, not only in their costuming choices, but in how they're behaving, and I think that allows the emotions to really kind of carry the day. And this version of Pride and Prejudice also has, I think we talked about the fact that the camera, the cinematographer Roman Osen, and in a collaboration with the director Joe Wright, they have the camera constantly moving so that we feel like the characters are like the characters do. Like, we're not allowed to just sit there and settle. We are constantly like feeling a little bit off balance as the camera finds a new angle, and we're having to adjust to that. And it has a lot to do with the characters as they're maneuvering around each other. And it's a case of the cinematography and the direction, supporting the narrative, tension that's already present in the script. And that's one of the reasons why, among many reasons, whenever I think about the fact that this was Joe Wright's first movie, just like, how, man, you're a prodigy.
Yeah, it's crazy. There's also like there's a moment like, and there's probably other moments in the movie that he does this, but like in that opening dance hall sequence, like there's a moment where like you're seeing everybody dancing, and then it's the shots on Lizzie where she says to Jane, if every man does not end the evening in love with you, then I'm no judge of beauty. But that shot like zooms into Elizabeth, and like that is not like a common thing in modern filmmaking, the zoom in, like, but it's done so fluidly. And it worked so well with all the other shots and stuff. Like, it's easy for zoom ins to look really cheesy in modern cinema. And the fact that like that is pulled off for that shot, and it worked so beautifully, like I'm always like, that is an instance of like very brave direction and cinematography, and like knowing exactly what you want and how you want to feel. And like that's a little moment that always stands out to me, because you got to be brave to like sort of go outside the norms of what sort of the modern rules of shooting a movie. There's a zoom in the movie Troy that does not work nearly as well, and it makes the film feel like a really old campy movie. But I still always give props to Wolfgang Peterson for doing it nonetheless.
Yeah.
But so yeah, I just thought about that one to remark on it, because like the camera work in this movie is just so breathtaking and like and sure of itself, and like and just brave, just with all that. I just think it's absolutely amazing. And then like, as much as like in like the dance sequences, like there's a lot of really aggressive camera work, then there's other moments where like the camera moves around in the opening of the movie as it's going through the Bennett's house, but then it settles down when you like it comes to a stop when you have Elizabeth walking outside into the frame as she's coming indoors. And the camera just sort of sits there and watches her from inside. She's walking outside as her dress is sort of billowing in the wind. So it's just like this sort of beautiful, like going from a moving camera to letting it slow down so that the actors and the costume design and everything can work its magic. And then you'll move the camera again when you need to go into the next room. And it's just, it's such a beautifully shot film. And yeah, the fact that this was Joe Wright's first feature film, it's like, it has no business being, and we're just talking about the camera work right now. That's putting aside like everything else that goes into making a movie this phenomenal. But just from a sort of a filming standpoint, it's like, dude, you had no right being this good this early in your career.
No, and I mean, and obviously Joe Wright had done work before this. I think he was like a
Yeah.
commercial director and had made some short films. But like, it is a different level to step up to making a major Hollywood, movie. And that like one of the other things that when people talk about like, why this version of Pride and Prejudice, why is it your favorite? Like for me, it's because it's, this is going to sound reductive, but it's the truth. It's because it's a movie. It's like they get to do things with the camera and the budget and the narrative flourishes that you can only really do in a movie. Like the one of the reasons, understandably so, that the people love the 1995 version so much is because it's a 6 hour long miniseries. It gets to be incredibly faithful to the novel. It leaves almost nothing from the novel out, with maybe like one or two exceptions. And for people who really obviously love the original story, that's a huge selling point. And I love that version of the story too. But and so obviously there are elements of this movie being only 2 hours instead of 6 that it doesn't get to focus on. Certain subplots and characters get streamlined or dropped or combined, because that's what happens when you adapt a story into a movie. But in return, you get things like, the dance sequences that we mentioned, the absolutely iconic, beautiful shot of Lizzie standing on the cliffside as the camera like rotates around and the sun is shining on her. The beautiful shot, like for instance, of her in the carriage with like the sunlight dappling on her eyes, or the iconic final shot, or the iconic shot of her and Mr. Darcy, with their foreheads touching as the sun rises behind them. And it's like, it's just the God's honest truth. Like, at least maybe less so now where, TV has, gotten a bit bigger budget, but like, that's the kind of thing that a movie version can do that the TV version simply could not. And it's beautiful because it's a different way of conveying emotion and character without words. And I think that this movie does that better than, frankly, almost any other movie I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's funny because it's an era where people are like, why would I want this story done in a 2 hour movie when I can, a 2 or even 3 hour movie, when I can get like a 10 hour miniseries version of it? And it's like, because there's just, because if all, if the thing that's most important to you is fidelity to the source material in terms of like getting every beat in the story, like I can understand that, but there's just something about the way that a film is crafted, and yeah, the pace that it has to move in, and the fact that you have to convey so much with less time on your hands, and just the way a film is crafted is so different from from how you would craft, you know, a 10-hour season of television. Because a single shot can, getting that to convey the emotion that in a television series where you can do like a whole episode where it's, you know, talking the characters through a certain, you know, like series of emotions or whatever, and then in a film maybe you have to convey that in one shot. That's and it's like there's power in that, and it's I think it's a different skill set for a director to get that across, for writers and directors to get that across in a film than it is in a television series. And it's not better or worse. It's just a different medium, and I just feel like appreciation for that is being lost. It's like with Lord of the Rings, you could have done like each book as like a season of television. Not back then. Like nowadays, like, you know, as we see with Rings of Power, there's a lot that they can do with the Lord of the Rings story on television if you have an enormous budget. But like, but even if they were capable of doing it on that level on television, there's just like there's something about the fact that I remember feeling this when I saw The Two Towers, and the fact that you can go from the start of that movie, you know, picking up where you leave off on Fellowship of the Ring, where the Fellowship is scattered. You know, Gandalf is gone, presumed dead. Things are in dire straits. And then within 3 hours, you get to the end of the Battle of Helm's Deep. And like, think of all the like the story real estate within that 3 hours, and the fact that you've been whisked away on this epic journey with the characters, and they're in completely different places from where they were at the start of that film. And it's all taken place within a couple of hours. And you've experienced that in a darkened theater on the big screen. And there's just something so thrilling about being able to go on a journey like that within the span of a single film. Yeah, maybe you didn't get to take as much time with this or that, but but there's just something so impactful about getting to go on a big, vast journey like that with the characters. And in the case of this film, going from starting off Elizabeth, who doesn't consider that she's ever going to be in love or anything, and Darcy, who's clearly got some social issues and like probably doesn't think he's going to be falling in love with, and then and within just 2 hours seeing where we leave them at the end of the film. It's like it's such a rush to go on that journey with these characters. And I do feel like it's not the same when you break it down into into a longer story. Even in the case of the 95-minute series, what's that, 6 hours or so, it's just different. And so I'm not saying one is better than the other, but I just think it's, people nowadays have a very simplistic view of what a film is. Yeah. And why a television series is or isn't better. Just because the production value of TV has caught up to film, that doesn't mean they're on the same doesn't mean they're doing the same thing. They're doing very different things, and it's not just as simple as the TV show can be longer, and so that's what we want. It's like it's gonna take a whole different approach to the storytelling. And I still think that film has an enormous power that people just don't always understand.
Yeah. No, and the thing is, like, everyone has different things that they value about a story, especially a story that they, is as beloved as this one. Because even though Pride and Prejudice is the greatest love story of all time, as I said, I think it is. The novel also is doing a lot of other, incredibly important things. It's making social commentary. It's,
Yeah.
talking about, like what life is like for these characters who are kind of like, not upper crust elites in this society who are, kind of living on the edge because of their situation where, women are not allowed to inherit. So they're basically in threat of being destitute if they can't find advantageous marriages. And the thing about this movie is that I still think it's incredibly faithful to the overall story. Like, it
Yeah.
really doesn't change anything. It just chooses its point of focus. Like, one of the big things that I will talk about in terms of a difference between the two is that and again, people can have different feelings about how they choose to handle. But like, one section of this movie that gets incredibly compressed compared to the novel or the miniseries is the section where Lydia runs off with Mr. Wickham and goes missing. In the novel, that is chapters and chapters and chapters of angst. And in the TV show, it takes up, like it's almost like an hour or more of screen time because it's a devastating event for the family. And the thing about this movie is that it introduces that same conflict and then it resolves it fairly quickly because, what's ultimately really important about that conflict is the fact that Mr. Darcy is the one who finds Wickham and Lydia and pays for Wickham's commission and the wedding to spare the family from the social disgrace. And he does it for Lizzie because he loves her so much and to right the wrong that she had accused him of earlier. And that is still there in every version of the story. It's just that the movie doesn't, stretch out that threat of utter social destitution for the family because of Lydia's mistakes to the same extent that other versions of the story do. And it's because the movie has to pick its battles. And what really wants to stay laser focused on is the relationship between Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy. And what's important with that side story is how it ultimately comes to affect, Lizzie's perception of Mr. Darcy and their relationship when he makes that incredibly generous act for her. So it's still there. It's just handled in a different way.
Yeah.
And like, that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. Ultimately, it's most important for the movie. Like, the movie has to choose, okay, what's our North Star? What's the constant central thing that we have to come back to that's driving our story so that it will continue to feel like a well-paced movie in this 2-hour runtime. And it chooses to focus on the most important thing, which is the love story between Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy. And anything that doesn't directly serve that story has to get naturally, decentralized a bit. The movie still has room to tell other amazing, stories like Jane and Mr. Bingley and everything, and like the relationship with Lizzie and her father and things. But there are certain characters who perhaps are not as directly, connected to the central Lizzie Darcy love story, who need to perhaps take a back seat in a movie so that you can still focus on what's the heart. And that really is the thing where I think people sometimes struggle with it, is that people have a tendency, I say people, certain people who, operate in online spaces and want to kind of prove their bona fides, have a tendency to want to intellectualize movies and television shows like this and focus on breaking down, how movies handle narrative craft. And that's a worthy exercise, but that's not what the movie is trying to do when you're watching. Movies are designed to make you feel.
Yeah.
And people are, again, certain people are uncomfortable with that language of simply saying the reason this movie works is because it does some, invisible, cinematic magic, and it moves me. It's telling a story that actually reaches into my heart. And people think like, well, that just means that, you don't understand it. well, no, it's you're approaching it with an kind of an open mind of letting the experience watch over you. And if you want to go looking for things that the movie could have done differently, you can do it. But the movie was constructed in such a way that this is, it's attempting to achieve the desired effect of making you feel something. And if it does that, then it works, as it works spectacularly well for us. And if it doesn't, then, for you, then that's a subjective, opinion. But the movie is ultimately trying to tell its story through the emotional medium rather than, trying to give you a beat for beat adaptation of the original story. And I think that it starts in the same place, it goes through the same sequence of events, it ends in the same place, and ultimately it's the same very rewarding journey. It just gets there in a way that perhaps for us feels more, like it's speaking from the heart. Even though every aspect of this movie is meticulously and immaculately crafted, it just is not, it's not perhaps showing its work in that way. And for people who need to see that in order to appreciate the craftsmanship, then that's fine. But we watch movies and television shows differently.
Yeah, I think a lot of people nowadays think that that creating a really good piece of cinema or television or anything is like it's a science.
Yeah.
And like if it was a science, every movie would be like phenomenal and a classic, and like it's really hard to do. And I think, and for me personally, I mean, what you said is right on about it making you feel like all of the things that I love, first and foremost, they make me feel. And that doesn't always come down to like, particularly with adaptations, like, how they went about like cutting something down or what they chose to replace it with. It's something more unexplainable. Like, you've got to be able to get across the things that really matter to you and that you want to get across. And then there's this sort of alchemy where it all comes together. And a lot of that is dependent on like what happens on set and then what happens in the cutting room. And like, it's just hard to define, what's going to make something work. But I always say that, like, first and foremost, like, the thing that draws me to the media that I love is the emotional investment. And, and so I think that's why I drive a lot of people crazy with, sometimes they feel I'm not as critical about certain things as I should be. But like when I'm sitting down to watch something, I want emotional investment. And if I get it, I'm less interested in the science of breaking down, like they did this, they did that. It's like, no, what did it make me feel? And that other stuff is fun. And when it's done, like sometimes it's both. Sometimes something can make you feel absolutely amazing. And then also, it can be enjoyable to look to see how they broke down the writing of the script and all this other stuff. And then it can be fun to dissect that. But it's never the thing I'm primarily interested in. And so, yeah. And I think when you get right down to it, and I think that this is a marvelous adaptation. I think they did a great job of like distilling it down to what was needed for the film and getting across the key points of the story. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's about the fact that I fell in love with these characters and they made me feel, and the movie makes me feel like what it's like to be hopelessly in love. And yeah, so it's, and that's something that you can't, like, that's not a science. That's not something you can easily replicate. You know, it's, there was magic on this film, and that's what makes it something that people come back to again and again over the past 20 years.
No, and it's one of the reasons why, movie making, as most of, in many forms of storytelling, it's both an art and a science, because I do find it, intellectually rewarding and emotionally rewarding at times to watch a movie, feel something immense and powerful, and then go back and think about, like, well, why did that work? What choices did the filmmakers work that helped make me feel that way? But then I also love when it can get almost to the full explanation, but then there's just that little space in between where you can't fully explain it. It just is. It's the magic. It's the little bit where that you have to take on faith. And that's, I think, where a lot of people run into the difficulty of, like, if the movie doesn't brings them all the way there and they're not willing to make that leap, then they're like, well, then the movie didn't, the movie failed. And it's like, no, it didn't. You just, perhaps it didn't inspire you to take that leap, And I think about, scenes, for instance, like the absolutely iconic scene, and I'm sure we'll get into more detail, like the proposal scene, or Darcy's first proposal scene, which in this movie takes place in the middle of a driving rainstorm. And people have talked about, well, why did the movie make that choice? And I'm like, well, because it heightens the emotional stakes and the tension in a way that's not, that you don't have to waste, dialogue on. Lizzie is feeling incredibly turbulent. Her world is being, rocked by this revelation about what happened with Darcy's intervention to separate her sister and Mr. Bingley. And Mr. Darcy is feeling incredibly turbulent because he has just finally decided to ignore, the inferiority of her birth and her circumstances and just pour his heart out to this woman that he loves. So they're both feeling incredibly turbulent, and and it's like, and the movie can just do. Yeah, and they're exposed. And so the movie, what does the movie do? It takes that feeling, and then rather than saying, I am feeling incredibly emotionally raw and exposed, it puts it into visual language in the form of a driving rainstorm. And as a side benefit, it allows two incredibly attractive people to have this conversation while they're soaking wet. And that also works on a different level.
Know, hot people are always hotter when they're soaking wet.
As fans of the 1995 version cannot argue against.
Yeah, God. Yeah, I can't imagine that scene any other way. And then you're like, then I go watch the 95 version, and I'm like, they're just standing in a room? Really?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'd gone and pissed off fans of the 95 miniseries with that comment. But it's like, yeah, it's such an absolutely iconic sequence. I don't want to fully get into it yet, because we're going to take the mid-roll in a second. But it's like, yeah, it's just like, for that scene, it has to be drenching wet. It's like, because that's, and then you got the thunder cracking in the background, to punctuate those moments, when she's left speechless by something he said, and then you hear the thunder in the background, and it's like, oh my God, it's like, it's just perfect. And you don't want to have that? Excuse you. This is brilliant filmmaking, is what it is. So yeah, it's, and that's, I think those are things like that are what are brought to this version that maybe will remain unique to this version. We haven't seen the new Netflix one yet, but it'll be interesting to see like how much it takes from this version in terms of um, just the cinematic qualities. The fact that because it's going to be a movie, and so it'll be interesting to see how much it's influenced by this. I wonder if it'll return like time frame wise to the time frame that most adaptations are set. And if that's the case, like then this version may remain extremely unique for some time to come. But in a lot of ways, it's truer because it's actually set at the time when Jane Austen started writing it. Which is why it's set in the period that it is. But yeah, I will say like that's the one thing that I think, like, jokes aside, that will be interesting to see like how much of an impact this movie will end up having on like all future iterations of Pride and Prejudice. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see.
We will.
I'm actually much more interested to see how much of an influence this has on Focus Features' new version of Sense and Sensibility. Because I actually think that Ang Lee's film and the 95 Pride and Prejudice share a lot of, pardon the pun, but sensibilities, because I think that, they came out at about the same time. And I think stylistically there's a lot of similarities. So now that version of Sense and Sensibility has been done, and now we're 20 years post this version of Pride and Prejudice, I have to wonder, especially since it is Focus Features doing it, if there's going to be more of a Pride and Prejudice flair to the proceedings for that film, cinematically speaking. But that depends on the filmmaker and those choices made. So we'll have to see. On that note, that it's actually a good place to break. I think let's go ahead and do the mid-roll. So we're actually getting close to winding down for the year. Things have been a bit erratic, over the past number of months. But that's life. But we have 2 more streams for the year. Next week we are going to be talking about Wicked for Good, which I'm really excited to have that conversation. That's an instance of a movie that like follows on what I was just talking about not to say I think it's a perfect film, and we've had discussions about some things that I think were maybe not done quite as well as on the first film, but at the end of the day, it made me feel a hell of a whole lot. And that's why it's more than likely going to remain pretty high on my end of the year list. Because even if I don't think it's a perfect movie, like the emotion of it, like, carries it so much. And like, I finished that movie just a complete mess. And so that's going to be fun to talk about. And I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to see it again in theaters before we have that discussion. So it'll be my 3rd time seeing it. Looking forward to that. And side note, I'm really happy they're releasing the score album on CD this year for this one. They did not do that for the first one. So that's actually coming out next Friday, so just in time for when we have the discussion about the movie. So I'll be getting that in the mail around then, and of course I already have the regular album with the songs and everything. So yeah, looking forward to that. And then the week after that, it'll be our final stream of the year. We'll be celebrating the 10th anniversary of Star Wars The Force Awakens, which I am super psyched about that. But coincidentally, that's another film that I don't think is flawless, but it has so much, like, the emotion of the story and the joy and the fun of it, is so exuberant that I love it with all my heart and soul. And so I'm, yeah, it's that's going to be great to talk about. And yeah, and then moving into next year, we'll be picking up with talking about the other two films in the sequel trilogy as well. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, no, I'm very much looking forward. As you said, our schedule may have been disrupted, both completely understandably because of your health reasons, and then just scheduling issues, for instance, on my part. But I am very glad that we're closing out the year with these three streams. A discussion of Pride and Prejudice that we've been talking about, doing again for years at this point. Wicked for Good, which I also had a chance to see in theaters and which I really, really liked, and I hope to see again before our discussion. And looking forward to talking through all the aspects of that movie that perhaps don't work quite as well, but also the movie aspects of the movie that work spectacularly. Specifically, the performances by Cynthia Erivo and should be winning the Oscar, Ariana Grande. And then obviously, Star Wars, we've gone through, the prequel trilogy, we've gone through the original trilogy, we've done Rogue One and Solo. It is finally time to start talking about the sequel trilogy. And I think it's fitting that, we'll commemorate The Force Awakens on the 10th anniversary, and then we can revisit, we can talk about Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker early in the new year, but we really wanted to hit The Force Awakens anniversary on its anniversary so that we could talk about the moment that surrounded that, and reflecting again on 10 years after that.
That's why I also am glad to have it kind of like the other two films are going to follow fairly quickly upon our discussion, but I do kind of like the fact that we're giving Force Awakens its kind of individual moment, because it was such a it's such an enormous pop culture moment that is very unique. And so I want to talk about all of that as well as the film itself. And so, yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun.
It will. We're immensely looking forward to it. And then we'll note as a part of a programming note, some of the discussions that had been announced and were pushed, namely our discussion of the final 4 episodes of Alien Earth and our discussion of James Gunn's Superman film. We will circle back to those. I can't say exactly when, but it will be, also in the new year, fairly certain. We do want to finish those off, particularly our Alien Earth discussion, because that stream in particular is starting to feel cursed because we've had to move it 3 times already. But we will get back to it.
I'm so annoyed because I just wasn't feeling very good that week. I am feeling better overall, but it is kind of my recovery has not been and is not currently a straight line. So yeah, that unfortunately happened on a week where it was really the perfect week to discuss it too, because we had just gotten the news that season 2 had been greenlit, and it wasn't and we were going to pick it up fairly soon after restarting our streams, and then I wasn't feeling good, so I was like, oh, it can't happen, and now it's getting pushed until the new year, which just feels ridiculous, but we are going to get to it because I love that show so much, and we can't not talk about the second half of the season. I mean, it was just absolutely incredible. So, but when we get around to it, I'm going to have to watch the entire season over again because it'll have been too long for me just to watch the second half. So, before we dive back into this discussion, just one thing I want to mention. We're not planning on doing any streams about it, but just because it's what I've been doing lately, I just want to mention that like I've finally, after years of putting it off, have been watching Stranger Things, and I'm about in the middle of season 3 right now, and I've been loving the show. It's so different from what I thought it was. I really thought it was a much more kid-friendly show, and it's fucking terrifying. So yeah, just because you got kids as your main characters does not mean it's a kids show. Yeah. Oh my god. I don't know, because I thought it was gonna be really akin to something like Super 8, and that's a very kid friendly movie, I feel.
No, it's much more Stephen King, So
yeah. I was so focused on like the sort of Spielberg Amblin Entertainment side of things, and then I'm like, no, this is actually really terrifying, and I love that about it. But yeah, it's all I can say is fucking poor Will. that kid needs a break. I feel like things are slightly easier for him this season so far, like, but because he's not stuck in the upside down or being like possessed. So, but that's a pretty low bar for doing okay. He's still dealing with a lot of trauma.
Yeah, I mean, all the characters kind of go through it in this show, and I'm very proud of you, Gwen, and your increasing tolerance for horror films after Laura and Trish and I kind of started to semi-corrupt you on that front, that you're managing to push through it because the narrative and the story is very much worth it. And yes, I cannot promise that things get easier for poor Will, but I can say that I have watched the first 4 episodes of the new season so far, and Will gets a moment that is one of the best moments of the entire series in that show. Cool. So he gets up, like eventually, I think the kid will be okay. But for right now, he doesn't feel okay.
I'll tell you though, when as I was watching season 2 and like things just got worse and worse for him, I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Did this kid not go through enough in the first season? Why do the writers hate him?
They don't. They just the phrase kill your darlings, or like characters who love the most, put them through the ringer. Like Will that probably suffers the most, but 11, she also goes through shit, and so does the Mike and Dustin and Lucas and Max. Oh God, Max, you will see. But it's so worth it. The journey has been so worth it, and I think I personally will own up to the fact that I got a little bit cranky when when I was so looking forward to season 5, and then I saw the critical reactions, most of which I didn't read, but it was basically just like this show is like tired and it's past its time, and I was just kind of like tuning that out, and then I watched season 5, and I'm like, nope, this show still has got the fucking goods, guys.
Well, here's the thing that I've sorry, we're going to get back to our main discussion in a minute here, but like I have so had it with like just articles, reviews, and by extension honestly the whole online discourse, because I've realized that like it all follows a narrative, and whatever narrative is most beneficial to the people like writing these things, that's what they're going to go with, and whatever allows them to make the most puns too. That's another thing that I've noticed. They love negative puns. And so I'm like, for me, it's like, it's all bullshit.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, all that matters is I'm going to watch something, I'm going to form my own opinion, and then fuck the rest of it. Like, this is something that's been like, obviously I was already feeling it all the way back in 2019, when you and I went through the whole Game of Thrones thing, but it's only increased since then. I think it's really just, it's become exhausting and tiring and honestly just infuriating. Just because I and maybe I'm sure a lot of those critics are writing some of their honest feelings, but it's also being driven by like a bunch of other stuff. And I do think that in the case of a lot of them, they're like, it's the final season of this big cultural phenomenon. I'm going to get a whole lot more clicks if I shit on it. And I just, I'm done with it, Jared.
I'm
done with it.
I'm done with it too, and I've been done with it for years. And I, fortunately, going through the experiences that I have gone through with franchises I love and who have had similar things with this, like Game of Thrones and Star Wars, I have developed a very sensitive bullshit detector for the type of bad faith criticism or clickbait, kind of stuff that I feel is not, engaging with the art as it meant to be engaged with. And the puns are a good marker. Like when I see a review titled "Stranger Things Gets Lost in the Upside Down," I'm like, nope, not going to read that. But I think.
Oh yeah, there was. I didn't read it, but I saw a headline for Wicked for Good about, coming back down to earth.
Yeah.
Because of the whole defying gravity thing. I'm like, fuck off. You really wrote this entire review so you could say that.
Yeah. And it's the kind of thing where it's like, we're not here for your clever wordplay, guys. We're here to tell us whether or not this piece of art, made you feel something or not. And if you can't give us that, then we will respectfully form our own opinions.
Yeah. So yeah, that's my venting on that for today. Yeah, no, I've been been a lot of that on my mind lately. Oh God. Yeah. So moving back towards Pride and Prejudice, just gonna do my thing where I show off all my stuff. I obviously I showed, we both showed our new big the edition. Will say, and you and I have had this discussion, they did not go as far as they could have gone. They did not do a new scan, a new 4K scan of the film negative, which they absolutely could have done. So it's not as much of an upgrade as I think I personally hope for. But it is an upgrade in certain respects, and gorgeous packaging goes a long way too. So I don't know. It's like, it's one of those things where it's nice, but it could have been so much nicer too. But I'm not going to get too. I'm not going to get too grouchy about it here.
The movie still looks great. I will say,
yeah, I will say it's because the existing 2K master that was used for the Blu-ray back in 2010 has always been actually a really good transfer. It's just that it doesn't hold a candle to like new 4K scans. But I've seen, as I said in the Slack, I've seen much worse come from far better sources. So, at the end of the day, it's fine, and it's got and they did a nice HDR pass for the film, which I think really brings out some of the colors and brightness and contrast in ways that aren't there on the Blu-ray. So there's a definite upgrade, but yeah, it's I'll have to cross my fingers for one day that one of the independent studios like Arrow Films or one of the other ones like gets it up their butt to to do one, and then maybe they'll go a little further with it. But in the meantime, it's a very nice 20th anniversary set. But and then this was the other thing I wanted to show off, and I'm pretty sure I've showed it off in the past, but like this means a lot to me too, because I actually got this from my mom, and now it's in my collection. But it was this beautiful deluxe DVD set from 2007.
Oh, nice.
It was in a nice thick box, and yeah, it's kind of got a very unique cover design inside for the case. Yeah. And then it actually has has a booklet in it that is actually the same as the digibook for the new 4K edition. Has a lot of the it's pretty much, it might have actually a few more pages than the other one does, because I think they might have slimmed it down a little for the new release. But yeah, I've always really liked this, and always actually been kind of jealous that I had picked it up from my mom. And then I was like, I should have gotten myself a copy. And but now I get to hold it on for her since she's no longer here. So, and it just has that much more meaning as a result. But yeah. And so anything else you wanted to say before we go back into talking about the movie?
No, I'll just shout out my old copy of Pride and Prejudice, the DVD, just because this was the copy that you can't really wear out a DVD in the same way you can wear out a video cassette, but this was the copy that I wore out watching, countless times. And now that I have the 20th anniversary, I will probably be watching that going forward, but I will be holding on to this one because, it meant a lot. And also, I will point out my much loved copy of the Pride and Prejudice novel, which is not anything special other than it's the original story. And I have been looking forward to rereading. That was another thing I wanted to do before this stream, was reread the book, and I did not have time to do that, but that's okay. It lives in here.
Yeah, I actually do have a nice tie-in edition paperback of the book that came out when the film came out. Unfortunately, it's not as in the pages are browned. It's not one of those that I took especially good care of, because back in those days I tended to just throw a lot of stuff around, and and I wasn't as precious about keeping everything in good condition, except for my movies, of course. So yeah, but still I'm very happy to have it, because it's an edition of Pride and Prejudice with the lovely Keira on the cover. So but yeah, okay, let's jump back in. We've talked about Keira and Matthew. I want to show some love to like the other fantastic actors in this movie. Talk first about Donald Sutherland, the late great Donald Sutherland, who is he's just so good in this, and it's a performance that kind of sneaks up on you throughout the film, because I feel like Mr. Bennett is sort of played in the background a little bit throughout so much of the movie, but like he obviously has this really great close relationship with Elizabeth, and then I feel like by the time you get to that final scene, he's just he just exudes so much warmth and heart, and the love that he has for, Elizabeth in particular. Fathers parents aren't supposed to play favorites with their kids, but we damn well know Mr. Bennett is a favorite. And then just, everything, that final scene with, you really do love him, don't you? And then the if anybody comes for Mary or Kitty, for heaven's sake, send them in. I'm quite at my leisure. He's just like, it's such a wonderful, tender performance. And I just like, yeah, I think he's absolutely fantastic.
No, I mean, his performance is wonderful. I've always loved it, but like this was another, development that, since the last time that we talked about this movie officially, back in 2020, now unfortunately, as you mentioned, Donald Sutherland has passed on. He died in 2024. So I remember the first time when I heard the news, like, my instinct was to go and rewatch Pride and Prejudice, because this is one of my favorite performances of his, and how how warm and empathetic, a flawed man, not perfect, but just the love that he has in particular for Elizabeth is. It is the one of the other emotional spines of this movie. Elizabeth has her relationship with Mr. Darcy. She has obviously her relationship with her sister, Jane, with whom she's the closest. She has her relationships with her other sisters, her friend Charlotte. But her relationship with her father really does feel, special, because they are the ones who, understand each other the best, and it makes all of their interactions, even in the beginning, when, as you said, Mr. Bennett is a little bit more almost a comedic relief character in certain respects, but a lot of that is still in service of his his warmth and affection for all of his children, but Lizzie in particular. I think back to to the moments when they are, when Mr. Collins first arrives at dinner, and both Lizzie and Mr. Bennett are kind of getting their shots in, well-deserved shots. And I always thought it was a beautiful little touch that the movie chose to give some of Mr. Bennett's dialogue from the novel to Lizzie as a way to kind of, direct that connection. But also, like, the way that she, goes and she, like, appeals to him when they're making the decision to let Lydia, the fateful heir, to let Lydia go with the Foresters. And she goes to her father and is just kind of like earnestly pleading, "Father, don't do this." And that is a moment he should have obviously listened to her. But when it circles back at the end, and he is the one who is, looking out for her, that, because understandably he's like, he doesn't want his daughter, unlike his wife, who very much loves all of her children, but is singularly focused on making sure they marry for advantage. He would be perfectly happy if Lizzie, never married for advantage, never married at all, he wanted her, if she's going to marry, just to marry for love. And that's why it's so beautiful when, he's like, "I don't have any objections. I just thought you didn't like him." And then she says, I do like him. I love him. And just the way that
he's a bit more, I was saying, just as a side note, he's a bit more willing to probably let her go than Mr. Woodhouse and Emma, who I think probably never ever wants.
Oh my God.
Get married.
I do think that those are actually very lovely companion pieces. Performance of Bill Nighy's performance in the 2020 adaptation of Emma that we love, we're specifically referencing, because they're definitely, it is notable that Jane Austen novels, they do have certain archetypes that certain characters fit into, and Mr. Woodhouse and Mr. Bennett definitely share the same archetype. But I do think that Bill Nighy's performance as Mr. Woodhouse and Emma is comedic genius. The innocence. But Mr. Bennett in this movie gets wonderful moments of comedy, but also some of the most truest moments of heart in this entire film, and never more so than that second to last scene.
Yeah. Also, yeah. And how wonderful for you, Mr. Collins, to possess the ability to flatter with such delicacy. Oh God.
And of course the moment where it's just the absolute stand up for your girl moments. Your mother insists on you marrying Mr. Collins. From now on, Lizzie, you must be a stranger to one of your parents. Your mother will never see you again if you do not marry Mr. Collins, and I will never see you again if you do.
Yeah. And I just love the way where he just won't look at his wife at that point, because it's like, I did this thing that I had to do, but also I'm scared of scared of Mrs. Bennett right now. But yeah, oh God. Yeah, that is. And then he does this wonderful thing where the camera lingers on him and he just looks out towards the lake. And I love that.
Yeah.
It's, yeah, that, and again, like just what I was saying before, it's the movie has this way of this sort of ingenious way of almost underplaying Mr. Bennett. Like, he's there throughout the film, and Donald Sutherland is great, but it's almost like he's like quietly moving into position to really be super impactful in that final scene between him and Elizabeth. And it's just really interesting the way it's done, because it's not like I said, it's not like he's not in throughout the movie, but somehow the movie seems to underplay him in a beautiful way that I think is just brilliant. And even though neither one of us prefers the non-US ending of the movie, it should be said that in other countries the film ends with Donald Sutherland's Mr. Bennett. And so in a way that just sort of strengthens that sort of magic trick that is his performance, that he's almost in the background for a lot of the movie, and then ends up at the end of the movie just being so important. That said, of course, we much prefer to have our true ending for the film, but I do think it's interesting nonetheless. But yeah, and speaking, we were just mentioned Mrs. Bennett. So just that's the great Brenda Blethyn, playing Mrs. Bennett, and this is a performance that this is another one of those performances I just think I'm more and more in awe of every time I watch the movie, because there's so many layers to her performance, and the fact that it becomes more hilarious to me every time I watch the movie too. She's so awful. But also she loves her family so much. And but it's like she is the absolute definition of the mother you are horribly embarrassed by at every turn. And yet she wins your heart, and yeah, in so many moments, but especially just that moment with Lizzie where she's, all she's wanted to do is marry her daughters off, and now she's having to bid one of her daughters, farewell in not great circumstances, and you can see the sadness and in her voice and in her face, and so but but like it's a really fine line to walk with Mrs. Bennet to make her so like nails on a chalkboard, but also amazingly endearing.
Yeah.
And I think if I'm honest, in the 95 version of Pride and Prejudice, it leans more in the direction of nails on a chalkboard for me personally. I think that actress does a fine job, but there's just something about what Brenda Blethyn does with just capturing the heart of Mrs. Bennet in a way that's like, no matter what she does, and she does a lot, you still feel for her, and you feel like the love she has for her husband and for her daughters, and so I think it's an utterly brilliant performance, and like I said, it's one of those performances that I get more out of the more and more that I watch it.
Yeah, me as well, because I will fully acknowledge that the very first time I saw the movie, my overwhelming takeaway, not being having read the book or at that time or seen the 95 miniseries, was, oh my God, Mrs. Bennet is ridiculous. and she is, but there is a reason for it. There is a method to her madness. She, and ultimately she is a character who is driven by love. I'm so glad you singled out that scene of her watching Lydia departing, and when Elizabeth goes and like gives her the kind of the hug from behind, because I think that's one of Brenda Blethyn's best moments in the movie. And having gone back and rewatched our discussion of our previous discussion of this movie recently, I will say that was one of the elements where I felt like I don't think we gave Brenda Blethyn enough love in that stream, because it's a really, it's easy to kind of just generalize and sweep her of under the realm of just comedy, because the comedy is there, it is manifest, and it's not just like her her verbal like protestations and her constant complaints about her nerves and her constant scheming and planning for her daughters. It's also like the little physical like I'm always
spasms all over
me. Or like the little there's the moment in the ball scene where she's like happily flouncing around because she thinks Jane is about to propose to Mr. Bingley, and then she spills sherry on this random guy. He's just like, what the hell? And she's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, do forgive me. And then she just flounces off and does a little spin as she's spooning sherry out of her glass. And it's like, yes, you can definitely see how this character would cause someone like Mr. Darcy even to say like there is impropriety being displayed, but she means well. And I think that Brenda Blethyn never loses the heart of the character.
That's the only part where I'm like, obviously, it's not something you should say to someone you're trying to propose to, but at the same time, I'm like, when he's talking about the impropriety of particularly Mrs. Bennet, I'm like, have you seen her? Like, he's not without cause in saying that she is outrageous. But at the same time, not a good thing to say under the circumstances to Elizabeth. But now there's just so many moments. I love towards the end of the movie when they find out that Mr. Bingley is back in town, and she's just like, oh, why he thinks we should be interested, I have no idea. Is it quite certain? And then the fact that like the moment that always kills me is when she's having the private talk with Mr. Collins, and he says, you do know that I've been graced by my patroness, Lady Catherine, small,
parsonage of no mean size.
And she says, I have become aware of the fact. Like, it's when it's too much for Mrs. Bennet. like that's when you're dealing with a real A real, I don't know what to call him other than a character. But yeah, it's the fact that she's like the least, perhaps the least one of the least self-aware people ever, and she's realized that Mr. Collins is just intolerable.
Yes, when you've broken the Mrs. Bennet scale, then you know that things have indeed gone too far. Of course, Mr. Collins is one of the reasons that makes him such a piece of work is that he has no idea that he's broken, that he's even managed to do that.
Yeah, no, it's, and speaking of which, Tom Hollander as Mr. Collins. There really is no other picture for me to put up other than this.
This is a moment, like, I generally am not a fan of what they call cringe comedy, where the comedy in a situation comes from just everything being just so flagrantly, painfully awkward. But there are exceptions to every rule, and this scene is the exception to the rule for me because this scene is unbearably awkward, but it's also comedic genius.
It is one of the funniest scenes in all of cinema. I will fight anybody who challenges that. And you want to talk about like comedic genius and great comic timing. Keira is absolutely phenomenal in this scene with all of her glances and looks. She's like, "Are you serious right now?"
Just like, because we talked about how the camera is always like moving in these scenes, but in that scene where they just like go in with the static wide shot after they show like him holding out the flower, and her eyes are just kind of like, oh god. And then it goes to the wide shot, and then just he's like, I singled you out as the companion of my future life. She's like,
and she keeps trying to interrupt him, like, Mr. Collins. And surely such an alliance will surely suit everyone.
oh my god, I was cackling watching this scene for like the 100th time. It's
No, I specifically remember when I saw this in the theater, everybody was cracking up. It was like, it was so funny. And so, yeah, I don't like quote unquote cringe scenes either. I find them very uncomfortable. Whenever people are put like in an uncomfortable situation in something, like, it's not unusual for me to pause the movie and be like, I have to stand up for a second because this is so uncomfortable. I can't stand it. But this scene overcomes that because it's so fucking hilarious. And just like, it's a complete train wreck in every possible way.
yeah. And part of, I think, what allows it to work is because, this is a scene where, Mr. Collins is ostensibly making an offer of marriage, an offer that Lizzie, does not want. And in a different context, that could actually be perceived in many respects as like, threatening, in certain respects, because there is a power differential here. But the reason it works is because you never feel for a single second like Lizzie is in any danger here. She is like fully capable of overcoming Mr. Collins, especially because she also towers over him, which is another just like, a brilliant little piece of, the casting, because, Keira's not super tall in real life, but the fact that she's taller than Tom Hollander helps with this. And it's also like, she's holding back initially because she's trying to be proper and let him down easy. And when she realizes that he's not going to let him down easy because he's just so clueless, then she's like, okay, enough of this shit. And she puts her foot down.
Oh god, and when It says, according to the practice of elegant females. And she's like, oh no. And she's like, I am not the sort of female to torment a respectable. Please understand me. I cannot accept you. And yeah, it's, oh my God. It's just, it's so good. And, but Mr. Collins doesn't skip a beat. He goes on to
Well, he goes on to Charlotte, who actually had seemed to be eyeing him. Or like the funny thing is that even though we find Mr. Collins detestable, and Lizzie obviously does, like there are actually two women in this movie who think he's a little bit of a catch. One is Charlotte, who he ultimately does end up marrying, although there's an actually beautiful scene that we can talk about later. But also, as I've mentioned, Mary seems to be like, if you just keep going down the list of Bennett's sisters, next you'll get to Mary, and she might say yes.
Yeah, I find it so sad the way that we catch looks from her where, like, she doesn't find any, like, the way that they're treating Mr. Collins to be funny, like, at all. And I think she has, actual affection for him, or at least, and also, like, sort of sympathy for the fact that, like, he's kind of being treated as a joke by everyone, which he is. He's ridiculous. He is, but I think it's really endearing that Mary doesn't seem to share that, that viewpoint on him, and I feel sad for her that actually, I think she would have been interested in saying yes to him, and so, but Charlotte is like, with Charlotte, it's a bit of it's a compromise. She's worried about her circumstances.
Yeah.
And so she's looking for that security. But to Mr. Collins' credit, he's like, they seem to have a very, functional, dare say, happy marriage. He's like, he clearly seems to like her, even wants to sit next, wants to sit next to her, which I guess is not the proper thing to do in polite society when you're having dinner. I guess that's not supposed to be done, but he's like, I just want to sit next to my wife and chit chat.
Yeah. No, I mean he's very proud of the life that he is accumulated under the patronage of Lady Catherine de Bourgh. But and I do think that it's implied that while Charlotte has definitely settled, she ultimately seems to be at peace with her choice, even if she does encourage Mr. Collins to spend as much time as possible in the garden for his own. But the scene where she comes to Lizzie and tells him that she's accepting Mr. Collins' proposal is, I think we had mentioned, one of the best written scenes in the movie, and it's a scene that Emma Thompson, the famous writer of Sense and Sensibility, in addition to many other things, had helped kind of brush up that scene, because you really have to understand why Charlotte is making the choice that she's making. And in that moment, it's not a joke. It is played as deadly serious. And it is one of the moments in the movie where we actually see that Lizzie perhaps is being a little bit, I won't say entitled, but like she's being a little bit naive about the realities of the world in which she's living, and she's being a little bit kind of willfully, closing her eyes to why someone like Charlotte would make that choice. Lizzie had basically said, if I don't fall in love, I'll end up an old maid. And she seemed at peace with that. But that's not a prospect that someone like Charlotte can realistically do in this world. As she said, I'm already a burden to my parents and I'm frightened. And I think that scene is, one of the moments where we see Elizabeth's character, soften and evolve a little bit.
Yeah, so I do, as serious as that scene obviously is, I do love the, Mr. Collins and I are engaged to be married. It's like, yes, of course, Lizzie. What other kind of engaged is there? Oh, but yeah, no, and then some other like just. I just want to mention a couple other moments with Tom Hollander because it's funny because this was for a lot of us like the first time we ever saw Tom Hollander in anything. This was like his and I'm certain he did lots of work before this, but I think it is the kind of thing that allowed him to break through and then all of a sudden he was popping up in lots of big projects.
And continuing to torment Keira Knightley because he goes on immediately to become Cutler Beckett in Pride in the Pirates of the Caribbean Dead Man's Chest in that world.
but like moments like the dance with Lizzie at the ball and just like his whole head tilt and everything and like but then like later on when he's got the little the clover
See, that moment's actually a little sad, but then there's also it's also balanced out by one of my favorite little bits when he sees Darcy and he's like, I must make myself known to him immediately. Then he goes and he stands behind Darcy and is trying to get his attention. And when Darcy finally turns around, he like swings his elbow and almost hits Mr. Collins in the face. Which again just goes to show how what the disparity in literal stature and social stature is between those two.
Yeah, and the really interesting thing about that scene is because and that really sort of hammers home the sort of the prejudice aspect of Pride and Prejudice. It's like Mr. Collins is someone who like has his own like prejudices towards those lower than him, but I think he thinks he's on like he's pretty high up.
Well, he's a man of God. He's a man of God.
Yeah, and I think he's not aware of like how he's viewed by those whose station is higher than him. I think he's oblivious to it. But that's the way it is. Like it's that's capitalism. That's there's always somebody higher up than you looking to step on you, and yeah. So in that way, I guess I would be sympathetic towards Mr. Hollins, but yeah, I think he did a bit more in the 95 series. I think about the way he views those lower than him. I think he's a bit more of a threatening character. He's still ridiculous, but I think there's a darker side to that. That's probably one of the elements that gets shortchanged a little bit. He's a bit more of a threatening character. But I kind of like that this version of Collins isn't that.
Yeah,
I'm quite fond of the fact that he is a threat to the Bennets in the sense that like he could choose to turn them out of the house, but ultimately he doesn't, and he's ultimately just sort of a harmless inconvenience to the characters, who's just sort of it's just fun to see Tom Hollander just sort of play him. So there are elements to the character that are missing, but I'm fine with that. And I actually kind of, part of me likes this rendition of the character the best because I like the fact that he's ultimately not that much of a threat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would agree because I always found David Bamber's performance in the 1995 version, as you said, to be much more just odious. again, great performance by a great actor, but yeah, there's definitely a little bit more of like an element that makes your skin
Yeah.
with that version of the character. Whereas this movie having to have a little bit more of a streamlined focus, Mr. Collins kind of serves more as almost more as a stand-in for the injustices of society. Like the reason he's in the story at all was because he's the man who's going to inherit the estate as opposed to the women because of the laws of the land. And that's not something that he did. It's just the fact. And the idea that he would try to make the effort to come and choose a wife from among Mr. Bennett's daughters as a way to get an arrangement that would suit everyone. Like that's not a like malicious instinct. It just comes across because he's so socially incompetent, and we clearly, in our modern sensibilities, we're like, no, this isn't the guy for our Lizzie. No, get the hell out of here. But it allows us to enjoy his performance more. Like one other moment I'll shout out is right in that opening scene, his reference about the what excellent boiled potatoes. Which one of my friends on Twitter and now Bluesky, Shay Hoffman, has that as her little bio, the "What excellent boiled potatoes" line, and it's like a beautiful little in joke that's like anyone who knows where that comes from, like, you're my people.
Yeah, I love the fact that like, and I've actually seen Tom Hollander like talk about that. I think he's really quite mystified by it. That this is a thing that has stuck in people's minds and that they will quote it to him. But
people are weird and beautiful in that way.
Yeah. Yeah, let's I want to try to move a little quickly just because I I don't want to go for 4 hours tonight.
Yeah, no.
So just we'll kind of move through the other players in this. Obviously, I think we've talked a little bit about Jane, but let's spotlight Rosamund Pike, who like, it's so funny because like before this, she had I really only knew her from she was in Die Another Day, the James Bond movie, and she's done so much other stuff since then. And she's got like, nowadays, because, it's 20 years on, she's got a very sort of much more almost regal presence than like she's so young and innocent in this. And I feel like every time I see her talking now, it's like I feel like I should be bowing or something. She's really, just accumulated this aura about herself, and maybe part of that is because of the role that she played in. What's the Amazon fantasy series?
The Wheel of Time.
The Wheel of Time. But yeah, no, I love her, and just the love story of of her and Bingley, and this is just so wonderful. Obviously, plays his second billing to Elizabeth and Darcy, of course, but I just think that her and Simon Woods are just so great together. And Simon Woods, of course, who like went on after this to notably star in the second season of Rome as oh god, why am I Octavian, later Augustus Caesar, and so it was. I remember it was really weird watching him in that, and like he's so like cold and calculating, but in this he's just the sweetest guy in the world. And yeah, I think the two of them were just so great together, and I will never tire of his like really geeky laugh in the parlor scene.
Yeah.
So great.
No, Jane and Mr. Bingley, like they're so sweet together. Particularly Jane, who is like the textbook example of a character who like would never hurt a fly. So it's like it when the things happen to her and her heart gets broken, you're just like, no, how could this happen to a sweet angel like Jane? And similarly, Mr. Bingley, he's guileless in that way. Like he is just he also like falls in love with Jane at first sight, and unlike Mr. Darcy, he is completely unable to contain himself. And that is why he, like, in many respects they take to each other immediately. Their tempers are much alike, but the fact that she needs a little bit more, as Lizzie says later, she's shy and modest. So she doesn't perhaps express it in the same way that he does, but her regard is obvious. And although he does, as Charlotte says, he does not know her character as we do, but these two are just like, you always knew that the story would lead them back to each other. And the time when they're separated, when Jane is, heartbroken, is like, you understand why Lizzie is so justifiably enraged when she learns that Darcy has separated the two of them. Like, that is an actual, like, sin that he has committed against someone that she loves dearly. But Jane, I also, she does, like, her arc is a little bit more subtle through this movie, but she does, evolve a little bit, by the end. Like, she does become a little bit more not hardened, but like aware of the ways that the war, as Elizabeth says, exposing my sister to, the world's derision for disappointed hopes. And it allows her to perhaps lose some of the naivete that she had at the beginning, where at the beginning, when she's talking about Caroline, and she's like, I know her to be incapable of willfully deceiving anyone. And by the end, she's like,
it's like, really, girl?
and then by the end, she's like, that pernicious. How dare she do what she did? Well, so yes, I do love that. I love Rosamund Pike's performance, and I've commented before the fact that, like, because she became so ingrained in my mind as sweet little Jane Bennet, the fact that she's gone on to play so many harder edge characters, I always have a little bit of cognitive dissonance, in particular with her Oscar-nominated work in Gone Girl, when I was like, oh my Jane Bennett, what are you doing? But obviously she, it just shows her range as an actor. And Simon Woods, I'm not as familiar with some of the other things he's been in, but I just love his performance in this.
Yeah, no, he's such a wonderfully adorable goofball. Yeah, it's the both of them are just great, and yeah, it's Gone Girl. It's one of those things that I've never seen the film, and part of that is because I know what the big twist is, just because of pop culture. Like, it's impossible to avoid that, and so I'm kind of like, I'm not going to get to experience that in the way that should have been experienced. But it's one of those things that I'll watch sooner or later.
Yeah.
And also part of it is like, I'm sort of scared of her in that, like, whenever I see
you should be
images from the movie, I'm like, I think I'm gonna instead of finding her to be cute and adorable from Pride and Prejudice, I'm gonna be absolutely petrified of her. So I don't know. I'll get to it one of these days. Yeah. So yeah, let's some other people we've got. It's we always enjoy talking about how absolutely detestable Rupert Friend, he's he's a nice guy.
Yeah.
But But yeah, Wickham is just the worst.
Yeah, no, Wickham is definitely a character who, the 95 miniseries makes it a little bit more clear what a cad he is, like showing more of his like gambling and his kind of ne'er-do-well qualities. In this movie, he is a little bit more just, like the pretty face who can get even someone like Lizzie to fall for him with just a few clever comments. And I love the moment where she does check him out in the ribbon shop. It's not really.
I was actually just going to mention but there's two moments. It's when she's clearly checking out his ass, and also when Bingley is like holding on to Jane's skirt, and
yeah,
like as she walks, and he is clearly checking out her ass, which maybe a little less charming than Elizabeth doing it to
listen, when you're living in a society where physical contact between the sexes is not is so uncommon that literally touching hands as you're lifting someone into the carriage is basically like almost going to third base. This is kind of it's understandable that the characters will get their kicks in where they can.
Yeah. But no, I always love that moment. It's so hilarious, just the way she is clearly checking his ass out, and then he turns around and she looks up and just smiles.
Yeah.
It's interesting, the whole thing with Wickham, because like initially he seems like a nice guy, but then as soon as he starts talking shit about Darcy, it's the way he's saying it. You're like, nah, this guy's full of shit.
Yeah. No, and yeah, he's a classic con artist in that he's playing on the fact that Lizzie is unaware of his history to engender her sympathy by, telling the story in such a way that, the absolute like bare bones of the story are true, but he omits key details and reframes them in such a way it approaches his advantage. And I think that once that game is exposed later in the movie, like you do see the way that his performance shifts. So like, when they're at the dinner table scene later after he's come home married to Lydia, and Lizzie can almost barely look at him, and he almost seems ashamed to look at her, because at this point, he knows that she knows that he is full of shit, and he almost can't bear to be confronted with that fact. And the character definitely has a darker edge, because like in one of the moments that it's easy to miss, and I missed it the first couple times and we were watching the movie, but when he and Lydia go off in the carriage and Lydia is like waving to her family, and we do see him literally grab her arm and yank her down and turn her to face him, and just in that little background moment that this is not going to be a happy life for Lydia, and it is kind of a darker strain in this otherwise very happy movie.
Yeah, but I will say it's a credit to Rupert Friend that he went on to do other things where I found him much more likable, because I absolutely hated him. And that's not his performance, but I hated Wickham. So I just remember though, when this movie first came out, and before like people knew Rupert Friend for other stuff, I think I remember reading a comment online where somebody was like, dollar store Orlando Bloom or dime store, whatever it's called. Which I thought was funny. But yeah, it's so good performance. Character is a bad one though. Just rounding out the Bennetts, I want to talk about, we mentioned Mary, and we mentioned Lydia. There's Kitty too. Like all of these actors, we are far more aware of all of them now. We've got Jenna Malone, Carey Mulligan, and Tallulah Riley, who have all since gone on to do like high profile things. Although I do remember that when I saw Tallulah Riley in Westworld, I was like, oh my God, that's Mary Bennett. But yeah, no, they're all great. Obviously, the roles are smaller, and like it's funny because the thing that I remember Jenna Malone from before this was she was in the movie Contact because she played the young version of Jodie Foster in that. But I couldn't think of where I knew her from when I saw this. I was like, God, I recognize her from somewhere. And obviously now she's gone on to do lots of other things like Hunger Games and so forth and so on. And and then Carey Mulligan, just where to even begin with her. And so it's really funny to go back and to this movie and see all these actors who are just really starting out in a lot of ways, and seeing where they've gone. It's it's another one of those things where you're like, yeah, it's been 20 years and this movie in a lot of ways launched some careers.
Yeah. No, we talked about how stacked this cast is, and that obviously we focus on the top line names, but like literally it's always a joy when you can literally go down the list of a beloved movie and like see like, oh, that person went on to become massively successful, and that person, and that person. And that's the case with Jenna Malone and Tallulah Riley and Carey Mulligan. Like the fact that this was Carey Mulligan's film debut is always going to be like a special, note for me on her filmography, because obviously she's gone on to become one of the best actors of her generation, multi-time Academy Award nominee, and this was her start, and whatever quality that allowed her to become a star, like the casting director Gina J and Joe Wright, like they saw it in her and they cast her in this. Kitty's probably the one of the Bennett sisters who has the least to do because she kind of just follows Lydia around like a puppy, but it's still, we do also see like her performance change throughout the movie. Like after Lydia exits the picture, we see her settle down a little bit. And Mary, we've talked about, she has kind of like a couple of heartbreaking moments, particularly with Mr. Collins, and also at the party where like she's very passionate about the piano, and she's playing the piano and not playing it very well, and Mr. Bennett has to come and like save her from ridicule, and then she breaks down in his arms later. Like that's
it's such a it's such a beautiful but heartbreaking moment. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's I do always sort of love when it's sad, but also it's like it's sort of funny too, where she's like, the first part is just sad. She's like, I've been practicing all week, and he's like, I know. And then she goes, I hate balls.
which she had noted earlier, that like a ball is a perfectly irrational way to make conversation. It would be better if conversation and not dancing were the order of the day. And we will get to my beloved Caroline Bingley's like scathing response. Indeed it would, but rather less like a ball. Yeah. But just to finish off the Bennett sisters, yeah, Jenna Malone, she's probably, I've seen her in many things since, and I really like her as an actress. I particularly love her small role in the movie Into the Wild that came out a couple of years after this, as well as The Hunger Games. But yeah, one of the things that's always funny about this is that I associate Jenna Malone now with playing very like, kind of tough, sarcastic, harder edged, characters, almost like tomboy-esque, and in this movie she is such a ditzy girly girl. Like by far the most obnoxious of the Bennett siblings, the one who clearly takes after her mother the most. And yeah, it's but she plays those comedic edges of it quite funnily, like the moment when she throws her handkerchief out at the soldiers because he thinks one of them's going to pick it up, and she's so certain, and then they just kick it and then blows away, and she's like, oh,
oh God. Oh, Lydia. Um, yeah, no, it's they're all great, and yeah, I always love the beginning of the movie, just when they're all huddled around the outside of the door, and uh, you know, uh, you know, 5,000 a year, and then he's single. Who's single? Mr. Bingley, apparently. Oh God, yeah. Like, and that's one of the big things about the production of this movie, is that they were all living together in that big house,
Mhm.
and you can really tell the chemistry amongst, especially the girls, and it's just, it had to be a blast for all of them to do this shoot. So I think
Real.
you can really tell that on screen.
Yeah, it does feel like a real sisterhood, and
Yeah.
that's not always the easiest thing to portray accurately, but these all these actors do it.
So let's talk about Caroline Bingley.
Yes,
Um,
aka Jared takes the reins for a few minutes, because we talked about this extensively. The fact that, yes, Caroline in this movie is awful. She is very condescending. She is very, cruel at times to Lizzie and to the Bennets, and even to her own brother Charles. And she's clearly someone who, knows that she is of a higher social rank and she wields that power. But I just love Kelly Reichardt performance and the way she acts, puts on these airs, because, like, this is another case of where an actor has gone on to play, she's gone on to play this character on Yellowstone that now most people know her for, and I'm always like, but she's Caroline Bingley. And I saw her first. But this is, but just the way that she kind of wields her, her societal position almost as a weapon, even under the veneer of ostensible, like, civility, is really kind of one of the elements of the movie that I think kind of shows the nature of the class disparity that the Bennett sisters are fighting against, because, you know clearly Caroline sees them all as inferior and not worth her time, and cannot believe that her brother is falling head over heels for one of these country girls, and and she
Charles,
just
you cannot be
be serious.
serious.
And but it makes it all the more, fascinating that, like, even though she looks down on Lizzie as inferior, she also clearly recognizes, like, oh no, this one is a threat. And so she immediately starts trying to circle Darcy and be like, mine, mine. And then he just has no regard
And
for that.
what's so funny is that Darcy is so done with her.
Yes.
Like in that parlor scene, I find his responses to her hilarious.
Yeah.
You write uncommonly fast, Mr. Darcy. You're mistaken. I write rather slowly. It's like he just shuts her down with like everything she says, and but she's not wanting to admit defeat. Um,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. No.
even to the point of like she's the one who like it isn't said definitively in the film, but like she's the one who circulates
Yeah.
about Lizzie and Darcy being engaged.
Yeah.
That causes Lady Catherine to come. So like even at that point, like she's still trying to thwart Lizzie, and maybe her delusion thinks that she'll still end up married to Darcy. But yeah, he is not interested.
No. No, but yeah, that parlor scene is really kind of Caroline's, moment to shine. I've
Yeah.
talked about my appreciation for the way that scene is shot, and how when they're tracking the camera as she's taking Lizzie around the room, but then they separate and then they wind up as the literal, like, angel and devil on Darcy's shoulder, complete with Lizzie in white and Caroline in red, and how they cross paths. And it goes to show cinematically like how they're kind of each almost pulling on the different sides of his character.
Yeah, I absolutely love that shot when it's the end of the scene and he's sitting there and they both cross and sit down. I just love that so much. It's such a beautiful shot. And yeah, but I like the fact that even though like clearly Caroline sees, you know, Elizabeth as a threat, but at the same time they do have this sort of fun banter throughout that scene, and they're both toying with Mr. Darcy, and so yeah, it's like, yeah, it's this weird thing where it's like, you know, she's acting very friendly on the outside, but she's got it in for Elizabeth. So
yeah. No, she's very cat-like almost. Like she has this kind of, you know, not just because she has this very kind of like smooth, slinking quality to her in the way that she moves, but also just because she is a little bit, you know, she'll scratch you if you get too close. Whereas her brother Charles is like, you know, the big lovable puppy dog. and I do think she enjoys the game of with Lizzie, even though she very clearly like wants her gone. But she also probably, you know, sees a little bit of like the intellectual challenge, because clearly, like, I love when anytime her brother opens his mouth and she's like, "What do you mean, Charles?" She clearly is very like you know, doesn't have the highest opinion of his intellect, but when she and Lizzie are saying their goodbye, she's like, "Thank you for this conversation. It was most stimulating," and it was, you know, like these are two women who are, you know, accomplished and intellectually, you know, intelligent, and they probably enjoyed having a sparring partner.
And then of course the other part of that scene that I love is that, you know, they're having the talk about, you know, accomplished women, and Darcy is clearly trying to compliment Lizzie, and she doesn't want to compliment when he's like, and of course they must improve their mind by extensive reading, and then she shuts the book. Oh god, it's so great.
Yeah.
No, the Caroline is like, you know, she's awful, but also, if evil, why hot?
Yes, exactly. There was definitely a strain of me thinking like, could I fix her? I could fix her. Do I want to fix her? But yeah, I mean, obviously this is Lizzie's. Whenever Keira is on screen, it's hard to like look at anyone else, and so I was just very impressed that Caroline managed to draw my attention, and that's
whereas me, all my focus was on Keira, so I was like, "What are you even talking about, Jared?"
Keira is still, you know, first in my heart as well on that front. So, but I my heart's big enough for many.
And the only other really big player that we haven't talked about is, of course, the great Judi Dench as Lady Catherine, which is like, you know, when you got a part like this, you want to flex, and you're like, yeah, let's get Judi Dench playing the part. And yeah, she's immediately so threatening and scary. And I love, God, and it's just like, and the fact that she makes it so that, like, she made sure that Elizabeth is going to sit next to Darcy in the dining room so that she can watch the interactions between them, and then so that also she's closer to her, so she can actually try to embarrass Lizzie, or, you know, or point out what she sees as deficiencies of her and her family. And it's so diabolical and so, you know, awful. And and Judi Dench just plays it to a T. Like, Judi Dench can be really sweet, but also she can be really threatening.
And there's not much sweetness in Lady Catherine, but there is a whole lot of sass And definitely the epitome of arrogance of her class. Like the way that she wields her power both over characters like Mr. Collins, who is just completely cowed by her to the point he can't even bow properly in her presence. But then also like other characters in her orbit, like the when with Colonel Fitzwilliam, when Fitzwilliam starts trying to talk to Lizzie, and
Oh
Darcy's
my
like,
god.
"Fitzwilliam, I need you," and he's like, "Oh God." And then a line that I just have always thought was like underrated in terms of its like arrogance, but it also that makes it comedic is when she's talking about the music and she says, "If I had ever learned, I should have been a great proficient." That's the epitome of like this class. It's like yeah. It's like if I had ever learned to God, I don't even fucking know what it, like if I had ever learned to you know shoot God what do you, if I had ever learned to write sonnets, then I would have been a better poet than William Shakespeare. And it's like you can say that shit, but no one's gonna be able to back that up. But she believes it.
Jeez. Yeah. Uh, and then of course there's like her awful dismissiveness towards Charlotte with the uh no excellence can be acquired without constant practice. I've told Mrs. Collins this. Though you have no pianoforte of your own, you're more than welcome to, come here and practice in the housekeeper's quarters. You'll be in nobody's way in that part of the house. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh my God, shut up. Oh God. But and you just mentioned the part where she calls Colonel Fitzwilliam over, but like that also is just a great scene, one of my favorite scenes of the movie, just between Darcy and Elizabeth, and it is particularly like I just want to. First of all, it's like beautifully shot, and it just looks so great with her sitting there playing on the piano, and just the way the two actors are lit. But particularly when it shoots like gets Darcy's like point of view and it shoots like down on Elizabeth, and she says, "Perhaps you should take your aunt's advice and practice." The way that Keira Knightley delivers that, and like the tightness of the camera shot and everything, I'm just gonna say it, like, and she's gorgeous throughout the movie, but oh my God, like every time she says that line and and the camera's on her for that shot, I'm like, oh, I'm like so hopelessly in love with it. It's so that's a whole great sequence. And but getting back to Judi Dench, obviously, like her other big moment is at the end of the film when she comes to speak with Elizabeth, and it's just as condescending as, first of all, she's condescending towards towards both Mr. and Mrs. Bennet, and you have a very small garden, madam. And but yeah, that scene between her and Elizabeth, where she is just so like just rude, condescending, and like just awful. And but Lizzie gets one of the greatest takedowns ever. And will you promise never to enter into such an engagement? I will not, and I certainly never shall. It's just like, oh my God, it's just, sir, you have now insulted me in every possible way, and can have nothing further to say. I must ask you to leave. It's so great.
Yeah, they obviously didn't film this, but in a world where this movie got like a sequel or a little sequel short, I would have absolutely taken Lady Catherine's reaction to learning that. Guess what? Actually, yeah, Yeah, Darcy and Elizabeth are getting engaged, and there ain't nothing you can do about it.
And then there's like, I just would like to see the interaction with her daughter. She's like, "Aren't you offended by this? Can you believe he did that?" And the daughter's just like, "I don't know. This is your thing. I don't really care."
Yeah, I forget if it's Joe Wright or if he was talking about this tongue in cheek, but I think he like made a comment on the commentary or something that actually Mrs. Anne, Lady Catherine's daughter, like has a thing for Fitzwilliam instead, and so she's just like, I don't know what you're planning doing, but she also seems kind of just a little bit repressed, unfortunately.
Yeah. Um. But yeah, it's that's just such a great moment, and um, yeah, and obviously, but before we like, you know, um, I wanted to talk about like the the second proposal, the big moment. But I also just want to, obviously, we weren't trying to do like a comprehensive coverage of every moment in the movie, but one of the big things that I did just want to make sure that I we mentioned was earlier in the movie, the big dance scene um between Elizabeth and Darcy. It's just like, I think it's just one of the like, just, this is a moment that like, it's so specific to this film and the way it's done, where it removes everybody else in the dance hall, and it's just this moment that's driven by the two actors, and the music and the camera work and all that. Like, this is the kind of thing that's never going to be replicated in another version, unless they just blatantly copy it, but I don't think they will. um and there's just so many moments like this that I think are why this version of Pride and Prejudice is going to remain so beloved and unique. But that sequence is just like, every time I see it, I'm just like holding my breath, and like, even before like all the other people are like pulled out of the shot and it's just the two of them, there's just that the dialogue exchange between the two of them is so like, it's so good. It's like under the pretense of waiting for the other to say something because they have to, and just like what they're getting across. And it's just so beautiful. And like I said, I just hold my breath in every time it goes to it, where it's just the two of them dancing and circling around each other. And like, I can't believe that I've only sort of mentioned him offhandedly, a couple of times this stream, but Dario Marianelli, the composer, is such a big part of, of this movie. And it's a very classical score, and, with a lot of focus on the piano. And it's just, it's such a breathtaking moment in the film, where it's just, it's why I love cinema. It's it's so utterly magnificent.
Yeah, no, the unique combination of how the camera is used in this movie with Roman Osen's cinematography and Joe Wright's direction, and how it intersects with Dario Marianelli's score is one of the things that I think elevates this movie to like a higher plane, that even beyond just the great performances and the incredible story and the great script by Deborah Mogic, that I can't separate this movie and how it makes me feel from certain shots and certain musical accompaniments that always just kind of go in hand, like the dance scene that you mentioned, and how all the other characters drop out and it's just Darcy and Elizabeth looking at one another. Or the great, beautiful, one of my favorite shots in the movie is after Lizzie has declined Darcy's first proposal, and then she's kind of in a little bit of a dark, despairing place, and there's that shot in the darkened house where she's going and she's just looking at the mirror, and the camera is just looking at her face half shrouded in shadow, and then and the music is kind of playing kind of softly underneath that track. And then of course the shot, the like, honest to God, one of my single favorite shots in the history of the cinematic medium of Lizzie and Darcy with the sun behind them as the rising sun, and their foreheads touching, and Daria Marinelli's score rising behind them. Like, it's that is a moment, I think I've said, like, that to me, that single image and that moment like defines what is like the pinnacle of cinematic romance for me.
Yeah, this is not the still from the film, and it's missing the actual sun. Yeah, it's from a different angle, but this is the moment, and it's just, oh god, it's
turns out the dialogue in that scene is pretty good too, because the Mr. Darcy saying in that moment, you have bewitched me body and soul, and I love you, and never wish to be parted from you from this day on. And Elizabeth just kind of smiling and taking his hands and kissing them and saying, well then, and then your hands are cold, and then the music and I'm tearing up just thinking about it right now.
Oh my god. I love it so much. Yeah, just turns me into an absolute mess every time I watch it. Yeah. Oh god. It's so amazing.
Yeah. Hey, Cassie just popped into the chat.
Cassie. Yeah, we're getting ready to wrap up soon. Yeah, it's yeah, great time to we're just gushing about how how we just dissolve into a puddle of tears with the end of this movie. Yeah, god. Sorry, I'm just playing the dialogue from that scene in my head. And it's just, yeah, surely you must know. Surely you must know. It was all for you. It's, oh god. Yeah, it's so good. Okay, I'm just gonna cry. And then we talked about the scene with Elizabeth and Mr. Bennett, and I'm just gonna say, I just love the moment where she's like, he and I are both so similar. We're both so stubborn, Papa. And it's just like you're so in love that you can't even get the words out and properly explain it. I think that's probably my favorite moment of performance from her in the entire movie. It's so good, and for me, like, that's the sort of, when I say this movie, it makes me feel like like what it is to be in love, and like that's the moment I'm talking about. It's just like she is just at a loss for words to describe how she feels about Darcy, and and it's such a beautiful, heartwarming moment. And then we get to the final scene, the real final scene.
The real ending to this movie. This is one of those things I'm absolutely hardline about. Like, it's like, you can convince me about certain other, arguments, but I'm like, nope. For me to have the absolute emotional, like, pinnacle that this movie always leaves me on, it needs the final scene, the real final scene.
I remember you were really scared that the re-release was going to be missing the final scene. You wanted assurance from me after I went to go see it.
I did, because there have been a couple of times when I was watching the movie on like BBC or on an airplane, and then it ends without the final scene, and I'm like, what the? And again, I know that people have differing opinions about whether or not it was truly necessary, but I always point out the fact that, guess what? The original Pride and Prejudice 1995 miniseries that everyone loves so much, that also ends with a kiss that isn't in the novel. So why is it?
Plus, here's the thing: like, this is actually the original ending of the film. It's they removed it from other markets after, like, specifically in the UK. It's that they didn't like it because the English are, stiff upper lip and all that. but like this was the original intended ending of the movie.
Yeah.
And we got it because they want to dismissively say because we need sugarcoating on our movies.
We're sappy Americans, and I own that, and I want my sappy American ending. Goddamn.
Yeah, it's like fine, but like I maintain like the fact that it's not like they went back to reshoot this because Americans wanted a more quote unquote romantic ending. This was the ending of the film. They chose to remove it in other markets, but like this was the intended ending of this adaptation of Pride and Prejudice. So like I don't like anybody ever says like the tacked on US ending. I'm like, no, that is absolutely not the case. I'm sorry that the rest of you all lost the original intended ending of the movie. But that's not my fault. Don't take it out on me. So yeah, it's just, and just, how are you this evening, Mrs. Darcy? Mrs. Darcy. Mrs. Darcy. Mrs. Darcy. Oh God. And then lean in for the romantic kiss, and it's just and then it cuts to black and the credits come up, and that's when I realized that that I haven't breathed for like a whole minute or two. And I let out my breath, and it's just absolute perfection.
Yeah, the reason I love it so much is not just because we get the kiss, which we wouldn't otherwise, and because I saw it first this way, but because of the emotional release, specifically, between Elizabeth and Mrs. Darcy, Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy in this scene where she tells him, you may only call me Mrs. Darcy when you are completely and perfectly and incandescently happy. And how are you this evening, Mrs. Darcy? And the reason I love it so much is because that is the way I'm feeling at the end of this movie. I am completely and perfectly and incandescently happy. And the fact that it builds with the romantic, kiss, him kissing her eyebrow and then kissing both of her cheeks and then kissing her on the lips, and the music swells, and then we get the cut to black, and I'm like, perfect. Absolutely. Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah, and plus it gives us Goddess Divine.
Yes, and which is one of the staples of our Knights of Keira banner, that we worship the Goddess Divine, and that comes from this movie.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's absolutely perfect, and it's the idea of watching this movie without this ending is like, it's just cruel. Oh God. But so that brings us to a close. And this was not anywhere near like sort of the most, like, even though we've gone on for 3.5 hours, it's nowhere near like the most comprehensive discussion we could have had on the movie, but we had that back in 2020 when we went beat by beat through the film. So again, anybody watching this who would like that version of us talking about it, go check that out. And I'm sure it's much more coherent. Uh, but yeah, this was just a chance for us to wax poetic about the movie and the actors and on all the stuff that we love about it, and celebrating 20 years of this beautiful beautiful movie. And again, I'll just say, like, I'm so happy that not only is it like still a part of my life, that I love this movie just as much as the first time I saw it, and I'm actually sure I love it even more. And I think the only sort of twinge of sadness is that it was such a thing that my mom and I did together watching this movie, and she's not here anymore. So but watching this movie allows me to feel close to her, and so there is that. And I've passed, like, sort of passed on this tradition to, like, now me and my godmother watch it when I go visit her in Maryland. And so that's been a thing. We also watch Love Actually during the holidays, which her daughter, not as much of a fan of Love Love Actually, partially because I think I scarred her, because it was my brilliant idea to watch it years ago when they came visiting, and she was perhaps a little too young for certain parts of that movie, which I forgot about. And so I feel like she might have been scarred slightly. But never mind. I watch that with my godmother too, and so yeah, looking forward to. We'll definitely be watching that when I go for Christmas this year, and we'll probably get in a viewing of this one too.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a absolutely breathtakingly beautiful movie, and really kickstarted so many things for me, and not just my one-sided love story with Keira Knightley, but also just the kinds of films that I would come to love, over the next decades. And there are things that I love, like the thing that I cite most of all was Outlander. I don't think I would have come to that if, like, my heart hadn't been opened to these kinds of stories. And I don't know if that's even the right way to say it, because obviously my heart was open to them. I just, like, I hadn't given myself permission in the way, because I loved romance in movies even before this, but it was always like it had to be under the guise of another kind of story. Like, like, I loved Moulin Rouge because it was a musical, and because it had all the flashy, choreography, and the big, wonderful, music. And I couldn't let on that actually what was really special about the movie was the love story in that, even though that's the whole thing. But and then, even in other movies, it could be an action movie, but if there was a really strong love story, that was really important to me. And after this movie, I was like, oh, let's dispense with all that. I'm just going to go ahead and revel in my enjoyment of a great romance. So yeah, it had a huge impact on me and continues to. So I'm just overjoyed to get to still talk about the movie, and with you, that we've kind of come full circle with this, and I love that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll let you go ahead and say whatever.
No, I mean, so before I get into my my feels about how much I love this movie one final time, I just want to run down a quick list of other people that we haven't mentioned and just want their names shared. A couple other performers. Peter White and Penelope Wilton, who play Mr. and Mrs. Gardner. I love Penelope Wilton from Downton Abbey. Always happy to see her in this, and Peter White from Hot Fuzz.
No, wait, but one thing that I'm just going to interject there. I'm sure I mentioned this on the last stream, but it's one of my favorite like laugh out loud funny moments that like you blink and you'll miss it. It's when it's when Mrs. Gardner says, they've just met Mr. Darcy, and she says, "There's something pleasant about his mouth when he speaks," and just this quick, confused look that Mr. Gardner gives her before he just moves on. It's like, I just find that so funny.
Yeah, no. Again, all the the smaller actors in smaller roles, like making the most of it when they get it. Mr. Gardner's enthusiasm for going fishing on the lake too is fun. And then we had mentioned the character Charlotte, but the actress Claudie Blakely, who plays her, deserves a shout out. And then finally on the performers, Tasman Merchant, who plays Georgiana Darcy, who's just a beautiful little ray of sunshine, and I will always remember as the original Daenerys Targaryen and what could have been, although I'm very happy that we obviously got Emilia Clarke in that role.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I'd love to have a quick glimpse at like an alternate reality so I could just like sort of see what that would have been like. But I, obviously like would never ever dream of going in another direction other than Emilia Clarke. But yeah, no, I love her in this, and I love the way she like teases her brother, and it's like after there's that awkward pause in the room, and she's just kind of looking at him like, like.
Yeah, I know you two have something going. But yeah, so that's it for the performers. For the crafts people, the costume designer, Oscar-nominated costume designer, the legendary Jacqueline Duran, getting to kind of expand the palette of the Pride and Prejudice story by again taking it away from the Regency era dresses and getting something a little bit more down to earth, but still a lot of beautiful costumes. I particularly love Lizzie's dress at the ball.
Oh my god, it's. Her dress, her hair, like everything is like it's when Bingley says, "Miss Elizabeth, are you looking for someone?" And she's like, "No, not at all. I was just admiring the general splendor." It's oh my, just like her performance is just so magical. And
no, it's a beautiful, piece of work, and even the dress that Lizzie wears for most of the movie, the kind of what's meant to be a very plain and simple dress, like it has an elegance to it, and not just because Keira's wearing it, but because it really, it has a character of its own. Also Oscar nominated one of the production designers, Sarah Greenwood, who's worked on a lot of other movies that I love as well. And obviously, this movie has gorgeous sets in addition to everything else, and gorgeous set decoration. So it helps it feel like, again, a more expansive world. The dance choreographer, Jane Gibson, who helps compose those wonderful ball scenes that we love so much. And then finally, I mentioned her briefly, but just to give her another shout out, in addition to Joe Wright, the screenwriter, Deborah Mogich, because this is, in my opinion, again, I think a near perfect adaptation of the novel, even with missing certain storylines and threads and characters. Like it took the heart of what I love about this story and put it on the page. And as she had said, on her decision to basically use a lot of dialogue directly from the novel, like if something's perfect, don't mess with it. But she still finds ways to accentuate that with additions of her own dialogue. Like I think I'd mentioned the first time, like the "I never saw such a woman" is from the novel, but she would certainly be a fearsome thing to behold is an addition for this movie. So yeah, I mean, it really is just kind of an example altogether of what we had kind of talked about in the first half of the stream. Like, movie making is a science and a craft, and there are a lot of moving parts and, decisions that have to get made, and you can quantify some of that. But there's also an aspect to the movie that you can't quantify, when everything comes together as more of the sum of its parts, and there's a leap, that where the magic happens, and the movie goes from just being a collection of, performances um, and costumes and sets and camera work, and evolves into something, something new, something beautiful, something timeless, like a true piece of cinematic art. And the leap of faith that requires, to set aside the how are they doing this, and just focus on the what is this movie doing, what is it making me feel. And one of the reasons that I love this movie as much as I do is because this is one of the movies that taught me to do that. This is one of the movies where the magic that comes on, that I see on screen and that I feel in my heart. Like, I can't fully explain it. I can explain it again maybe like 95% of the way, and then there's that 5% of just like, I don't know how they did this. I don't know how they made this piece of art that means so much to me, but I'm so glad they did, and I'm so glad that I found it in my own heart to take that leap of faith, because now that I'm on the other side of that, it has changed the way that I look at storytelling. And so I will, not just cinematic storytelling, but, all storytelling. And it is one of the reasons why I personally feel like if you were going to go into any story, go into it with an open heart, because you never know what you might find. And in this case, what I found was one of, in my opinion, one of the greatest stories ever told, and one of the greatest movies ever made.
Absolutely. Well said. Before we sign off, I pulled up a couple more pictures that I have that I actually wanted to show. These are saved from all the way back in 2005, 2006, which are some ads that ran in both Variety and the Hollywood Reporter, which are for your consideration, ads for the movie when they were campaigning for various awards and stuff. And I have kept these in a folder all these years. And, always me wishing that they had gotten some more nominations than they did, but they still did well with 4 nominations, including Best Actress. So, but yeah, I always love when they start campaigning for the various awards and stuff at the end of the year, and you get all these really nice layouts. But
yeah.
And then one more, which goes on well with you showing off. You still have that your original DVD, because here's an ad for the DVD.
4 Academy Award nominations, including 2005 Best Actress Keira Knightley. And all due respect to Reese Witherspoon, who won that year for Walk the Line, but that will always be Keira's Oscar in my heart.
Yeah. Oh, no, look at that. And back in the day, own it on DVD, February 28th. Oh, God. But yeah, I thought that would be a nice, nostalgic way to cap off the stream. But yeah, that's it. folks. Next week we'll be talking about Wicked for Good, and then the week after that we'll be doing a 10th anniversary celebration of Star Wars: The Force Awakens. Looking forward to both of those. And not least because it'll give me an excuse, as I said, to once again go back to see Wicked for Good for the third time. Not that I need my arm twisted, but yeah. And then there's some other stuff I'm like, we won't be getting to them discussion wise, but some other stuff I'm looking forward to going out to see. I want to go see what's the title of it? Wake Up Dead Man, the Knives Out sequel, and as well as there's something else. There were some other things coming out. I'm trying to remember. Oh, Hamnet. I'm looking forward to giving that a shot. And yeah, and then I'll have to wait to see what comes first, whether they bring it back out into theaters or if it is available for rental at a cheaper price. What's the other one?
One battle after another.
One Battle After Another, which I haven't seen yet. But yeah, I would prefer to see it in theaters because I feel like it'll be really impactful on a big screen. But also if it's available, if it becomes available for like $5.99 at home, I'll go ahead and probably just spend the money and see that at home because it is a lengthy one too.
It is.
Yeah. But yeah, looking forward to those. And yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So anything else you want to say before we sign off, Jared?
No, I am like Mr. Darcy, completely and perfectly and incandescently happy with this movie and where we've left it. So thank you again for the opportunity to talk about it, Gwen. It is always a joy.
Yeah. So we went an hour longer than our last stream about it. And which is par for the course these days.
Mm-hmm.
But that's okay. Anyway, so looking forward to seeing you guys next week. Again, we'll be talking about Wicked for Good. So looking forward to that. And until then, I don't know. I don't have a real good sign off for this one because, I could say one of the really romantic lines, but then I feel like I'd be sending out, might give some of you guys the wrong impression. But anyway, hope you guys all have a great night and we'll see you next week. And yeah, have a good night. Bye.
Keep your heart open.
Yeah.